IB Nation, welcome. It is the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour coming to you on a Monday afternoon. Hope everyone had a great weekend. We are resetting here after the disappointing loss, 38-27 against USC Trojans on Saturday. But we, as always, have a lot of recruiting info and information, intel, everything that we want to share with you here at irishbreakdown.com. I already see people asking, what, I'm not good enough for you? I'm Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here at irishbreakdown.com. Sean Davis will be joining me here in a couple minutes. I think he's finishing up with the Lucky Lefty podcast, which, of course, you can find at CFB Nation on the on YouTube channel, which is associated, of course, with irishbreakdown.com. So don't worry. It's not just me. You'll be getting Sean Davis here as well, but we'll be talking a lot of different topics today. If you joined Brian Driscoll yesterday on the show, you know that Christopher Terek, 2023 offensive tackle out of Glenbard West in the state of Illinois, committed to the University of Notre Dame, decommitted from Wisconsin, ended up in the Notre Dame class, projected to play interior offensive line with the Irish on the next level, which brings Notre Dame's offensive line class in 2023 to 5, which concludes what we should expect from this offensive line group as we are sitting here only a few weeks away from National Signing Day, which is on December 21st. For people, I know they were talking about that in the chat a little bit on December 21st. So we should only be expecting a couple more spots open. So we'll be diving into Christopher Terek, what it means for Notre Dame, what type of football player he is, and what's the next step for this 2023 class? Because there is, like I said, we are now sitting with 24 commits in the class for Notre Dame. There is only a couple spots left. We're going to be able to push it to 27. So we'll be talking about what's next for the class. Who are the players still left on the board? Where they are in their potential recruitment. Some already have commitment dates that they have set. So we'll be taking a look at that. Also be recapping this past weekend. If you guys haven't been following along with the high school football season, everybody is now in playoff mode across the country, and there are several Notre Dame commits that have won state championships this past weekend, won big playoff games, mammoth performances. So we'll get into that as well. And then, of course, the last thing we do on every single podcast here at Irish Breakdown is that we're going to do a mailbag. And the mailbag could be a lot of different things, folks. Look, we're recruiting centric. So if you have Notre Dame recruiting questions, please throw them in the chat. If there are any national recruiting questions, if there are general football questions, NFL, college football, anything. As we're getting closer to the holidays, if you want to ask us what we are planning on get our kids for Christmas, we're here to answer everything here. And of course, before we start, if you could please hit that like button, subscribe to this podcast, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. And throw in a Ryan Roberts is awesome. We love listening to him type of conversation, right? So do that. Just commenting on Twitter, if you don't follow me at Rise and Draft, that it is going to be, folks, a wild offseason. Wild. And I'm not even talking from the recruiting side of things, because that's going to keep me busy, right? We're talking about the early signing day period that's ending here on the 21st. Talking about the next signing day coming pretty shortly after. Then you're talking about the transfer portal. You're talking about the regular team stuff, getting us all ready for the 2023 season. It's going to be very busy, which means that you should stay locked in. Boards at irishbreakdown.com. Also, a lot of great intel that will be coming. Coaches firings, coaching hirings. There's everything that we have a lot of stuff to talk about, right? So let us first start off with Christopher Terek, Again, offensive lineman 2023 class out of Glenbard West High School. If Glenbard starts ringing a bell for you all here in a second, right? That will be because Notre Dame has a commitment in the 2024 class to Cam Williams out of Glenbard South, Glen Ellen, Illinois. And, the first time that I heard Christopher Terek's name, because he had visited for the Stanford game and then made his decision, obviously, to, so, all right, full disclosure on the process for Christopher Terek. Maybe that's a good place to start, okay? So Christopher Terek was committed to the University of Wisconsin, visited for the Stanford game. During that weekend, the Stanford visit, he was offered by Notre Dame. And immediately, he was extremely conflicted. One, because he really likes Notre Dame, obviously. He ended up committing there. And number two is that Wisconsin is going through a transitional period, right? We know that the rumors, and obviously it looks like Luke Fickell is going to be the next head coach of Wisconsin. That's, just merely some dotting of the I's at this point. And if he is, that's a transitional period, right? Paul Chryst gets fired. Is Jim Leonard going to be the coach at Wisconsin? What's the future going to look like? And now it's Luke Fickell. So that made him kind of rethink his commitment to Wisconsin. He ends up decommitting yesterday and therefore flipping to Notre Dame. And a little bit of the backstory is that, I'd kind of talked to him a few times after he visited Notre Dame for the Stanford game. And at that point, he was kind of like, I'm conflicted, right? I love Wisconsin. I want to stay, I love the staff that has recruited me, but of course it's a different staff that's most likely coming in, right? So he's conflicted because he loves Wisconsin, doesn't know what the all-time vision of moving forward is going to look like. And then Notre Dame comes in and, immediately he meshes with Harry Heastand, the other offensive line commits in the class, and he hits a dilemma. Do I stay? Do I pick Notre Dame? And at that point, he looked at Notre Dame and he said, you know what I'm going to do? Because they ended up making it to the semifinals of the playoffs this year in the state of Illinois. Basically, what the next step for Christopher Terek is that he said, you know what? I'm going to put a pause button on this recruitment. I'm conflicted. It's going to be Wisconsin. It's going to be Notre Dame. We'll see what it is. I'm going to let everything kind of play out a little bit. And he goes, I'm just going to kind of chill, let the season end, get through the playoffs, all that good stuff. And then after that, I will make my decision. And then, obviously, that takes us to here we are now with Christopher Terek becoming the 5th offensive lineman in the class, 25th commit in the class for Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And now I'm joined, of course, by Sean Davis, who is a recruiting analyst here at irishbreakdown.com, as well as the co-host of the Lucky Lefty podcast. Make sure to go subscribe that on the CFB Nation podcast platform. Sean, so we're just talking a little bit about Christopher Terek, man. Obviously a massive get for Notre Dame. I went through a little bit of the backstory of how we got here. What was he looking for? Why the decision now? Everything makes a lot of good sense, right? So, Sean, let me ask you, because this is a great place to start here. And I'm glad you popped in when you did, because he's an Illinois guy. As everyone knows, Sean Davis is also an Illinois guy, so he's well aware of Christopher Terek, and we've been talking about him now for several weeks as he kind of made the final decision. Sean, I guess the first thing that people are going to ask is, how good is Christopher Terek? What's he going to bring to Notre Dame? What type of player are the Irish getting here?
Well, after losing one of their commits along the offensive line, and being at 4, you wrote a great article, I would think, about 2 weeks ago, and you listed 5 guys that you were suggesting that Notre Dame would go after, right? And Christopher Terek, I don't even know if he was at the top of the list at that point in time. But this goes back to evaluation, right? But there are guys, whether it's in-state, you had guys commit to Ohio State. They were 5-star. They were highly touted, highly thought of. But there's just something about Harry Heastand and knowing exactly what he wants and what he needs along that offensive line. And it was Harry Heastand that really, along with the rest of the staff, that identified Christopher Terek. And Christopher Terek is a kid, if you were able to watch his commitment show last night with Brian Driscoll and Brian Smith made a great point. And we've pointed this out with Charles Jagasaw and Sullivan Absher. offensive linemen and their development from, I think, skill position players, you can see from sophomore year to junior year, like, oh, snap, the light went on. For offensive line players, there's something about that junior film to senior film in a lot of cases where it's like, yo, his senior film is a whole lot better than his junior film. And we pointed that out about two of the guys that were already committed in the class. And it's the same thing for Christopher Terek. Like, he's vastly improved. And I think Wisconsin just happened to get in on him very early because they identified him at a young age. And historically, Wisconsin has gone to that region of Illinois to get a lot of their offensive line. So there was a familiarity there with the coaches in that region and knowing and trusting what they were getting from Terek at a younger age. And you start to see on film, this young man developed and got extremely better. And now Notre Dame, he could actually play tackle, but I think at Notre Dame, what they see for him may be something that's a little bit different. But Brian, he might have the ability, in certain situations due to injury. If injuries happen, he could in a pinch move out and possibly play right tackle in a pinch if they needed him because he has that background and that experience. But I think what we're going to see from this young man moving forward is him on the inside using his size and his strength to his advantage.
Yeah. Well, Sean, that's what makes me so excited about this offensive line class, to your point, is that I do think Christopher Terek is best inside at guard. I compare him a little bit to Alex Bars, and I don't know if he'll ever be quite as good as Alex Bars, because Alex Bars ended up being a really good player before he unfortunately got injured his final year. But, I mean, that's the type of kid I see, though. Could he play tackle in a pinch? Yeah, I think he can. It's serviceable enough, right? Like, he's a good enough technician. He's got enough length. But inside, I think that's where you really unlock his overall ability. But, I mean, Sean, my favorite thing, though, is that now you have 5 offensive linemen that you could literally throw out a starting 5 in theory out there, right? You talk about Charles Jagasaw at left tackle. You talk about Sullivan Absher at right tackle, Sam Pendleton and Christopher Terek inside at guards, and then you got Joe Otting, if he develops, could be the starting center down the line for Notre Dame. So I think that's something that we need to talk a little bit more, folks, is, when we rank recruiting classes, we get very caught up in stars and national ranking, and all that stuff is important. We've talked about it, right? You need to recruit talents. It matters, right? But for an offensive line class, recruiting 5 players in a 5-man class that can fit together, that can project favorably, because there is a reality where those 5 down the line are your starting offensive line in Notre Dame if they're developed properly. Like, that is possible, Sean. So I think we don't talk enough about how much fit matters for a class.
You said fit, and what jumped out to me right there is I had a conversation. I'm interested in seeing what you think about this. I remember the conversation I had with Chancey Stuckey, and this is when Notre Dame really, this offensive recruiting class was pretty much in neutral. No momentum. Staff had just really come together. And Chancey Stuckey starts to tell me about how he wants his wide receiver room to look like the starting 5 of a basketball team with these different attributes and different responsibilities. And I never thought about that until I went and heard from Dylan McCullough, and he said, yo, this is the variety of guys I want to have in my running back room. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Is this like something that's cohesive going through this program, or is it just the offensive side of the ball? And then Harry Heastand, because you have 2 tackles that might end up leaving after the next year, but they're 2 totally different type of tackles.
Oh, without doubt. Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So that goes to what you're talking about, fit, variety, what Harry Heastand sees, how he sees Charles Jagasaw now, which I would say, I think what we saw from Charles Jagasaw and what we waited to see after the senior film is what Harry Heastand saw. And that's why the conversation every time Jagasaw goes to campus, he's in the film room with Harry Heastand. or they're on the sideline talking about technique, and he's telling them, watch this during the game. Watch this from the unit during that game. And that's why Charles Jackensaw took that 2.5-hour session he had with him, with his mom in the room, and took it back and started to apply that to his play, his ability on the field, and it made him better. So in essence, Harry was coaching him from a distance his senior year. And how did his senior film look to you?
It's pretty good, man.
It's pretty good. So, Harry saw something, but he also wanted him to be a fit. So he started to mold him into what he wanted him to be at Notre Dame. Like, I can take you as is right now. Like, I just met you in January. Literally just spoke to you for the first time, like late January. So I'll take you as is now, but I'm going to start working on you now before you get to Notre Dame, so that you can be at a certain fit and a certain point of what we need, right? Jackson can come in and play guard.
Oh, for sure.
If he's that good, based upon what he's worked on, you can look at him and say, oh, yeah, we can put him next to Blake Fisher and probably have one of the most physically dominating, the right size of an offensive line. Like
in college football. Yeah.
Football.
Yeah, man.
Right?
Yeah.
And then if Blake leaves, guess who's going out to right tackle or even possibly left tackle?
It's the Evan Neal track, man. It's the Evan Neal track. That's how it works.
Perfect pump.
That's how great offensive lines, I think, are built, Sean. It's like get the best 5 on the field, and then as guys graduate or move on to the next level, you slide guys out, you slide guys in, and that's kind of how the wheel keeps turning. And hey, man, for me, I was excited about Charles Jaggerstone from the beginning because of the talent he has. Where I feel like he fits positionally has just changed a little bit now. And that's exciting because he has Harry Heastan and Chris Watt and Trevor Mendelson and a lot of really good offensive line minds that are going to be able to work with him. So it's exciting, man. Wanted to put this one up real quick because you can always count on a good comment from D-Troll Hunter, Sean, when I talked about fit. He said, you mean you don't need 12 defensive linemen in one class? And D-Troll Hunter, I would say that's and it's not the only reason, but there's a reason that Texas A&M went 5-7 this year. Like there's a reason for those types of things. There's a little roster construction issue right now with Texas A&M, but hey, they just beat LSU, so we still owe them a little something.
I think for that comment, we should call him D-Troll Hunter.
Yes. Oh, I love it, man. I love it. You can always count on D-Troll Hunter for having a little bit of a troll comment, and I love it more than anything. Want to send a quick shout out. Mark Applegate just put in a comment that it's his 38th. I'm sorry. I'm turning back the time. Turning back the clock, though, Mark. 38th birthday today. I know it wasn't what we thought the season was going to be, but I am excited about what the future looks like, as am I, Mark, and I just wanted to bring this one up and wish you a happy birthday. I know some people have already put that in the chat, but happy birthday to you, sir. Hope it's a great one. All right, Sean, so one thing I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you saw this, but this morning I put out a piece on Irish Breakdown. Yesterday I got to sit down with Cam Williams for a couple minutes, Sean, because I'm like, he goes to Glenbard South. Christopher Terek goes to Glenbard West. Is there any crossover there? Do they know each other? Turns out that Cam Williams and Christopher Terek played Little League ball together, man. So had a nice piece where he talked a little bit about, his relationship with him growing up. Cam said that he reached out to Chris as soon as he was offered, and then the Paul Chris stuff happened, trying to start to recruit him, telling him like, hey, man, you know where home is. And I've always talked about this, and we've talked about it a ton on this show. And Cam Williams is one of the better recruiters for the 2024 class, but he's even recruited some 2023 guys, man, which is nice. So it was just really cool to see that those guys had a history together. They've been teammates in the past, and now they're going to be teammates again in South Bend, which is pretty dope. So talk a little bit.
The O-line coaches actually graduated from the same school, if I'm not mistaken. I think Chris Watt is an alum from the same high school, if I'm not mistaken. So there's that connection as well.
Yeah, that's interesting because we always see that. I mean, because it's who was it that just? Oh, it's isn't Jagasaw from the same spot Tommy Reese came out of, right? Isn't Tommy from the same?
No. Jagasaw is from.
Oh no! You know who it is? It's Riley Mills. Riley Mills are from the same high school as Reese, right?
Yeah.
That's what it was. Yeah. But I mean, just kind of put the bow on this one, Sean, because again, we wouldn't want to spend a ton of time on this because Brian talked about it a lot yesterday, obviously during the commitment show. But it was a really, really nice pickup for Notre Dame yesterday, in my opinion. You get a physical player. I got another article that's going to be coming out pretty soon about the attitude of the 2023 offensive line class. And I mean that with the best possible conversation, their disposition they play with, the physicality, really, really like where Notre Dame is coming. Because when you look at them, Sean, and I think that this is another thing for fit, right? Like they all fit together positionally. But I also love that when you're talking about how these dudes play football, play the game from a physical perspective. I mean, Sam Pendleton's a dog. He is a physical dude. There's no doubt. You pop on his senior film, man, he is dogging dudes, got strong hands. He is a really fun football player. And then, I mean, Sullivan naturally runs the triple option, so he's firing off the football and just displacing gaps. You have those two guys that are just physical maulers. You got Joe Otting, who needs to gain a lot of weight, but like, man, he puts some dudes in the dirt out of his high school in Kansas, out of Hayden High School. So you get those three that are monsters. Charles Jagasaw is the most talented player. And by the way, all-state wrestler. So he's got a little dog in him as well. He will punish you in the run game. And then Christopher Terek kind of just puts the exclamation point on the fact that not only do you have 5 talented offensive linemen, you have tone setters up front for this Notre Dame class. And with how this class is being formatted and how the Notre Dame team wants to run, Sean, we talk about the physicality and running the football. I mean, could you find 5 better guys that fit better as far as guys that want to just dominate dudes in the run game? I mean, can you find them? It's a serious question for you. Like,
it goes right to what you were saying with fit. It's from the top. Like, I hear Chancey Stuckey, I hear Dylan McCullough, I hear Harry Heastan, or see what Harry Heastan is doing in recruiting, and it's all built to fit the vision of Marcus Freeman, which is what? Run the ball and stop the run. That's the vision. Run the ball, stop the run. And, man, we got some maulers, some mean dudes coming in this recruiting class on the offensive line. And I'm all for that. I don't exactly want my offensive tackle, my offensive guard and center to be guys that want to pick guys up. No, pancake them, talk to them, walk around. We're coming right back. Stay right there. That's what you want. So my question to you is, do you think there is a difference? Because we have mentioned at other positions in this 23 class, or even looking at guys that were in the 22 class, the phrase, they move different. They move different. With Blake Fisher and with some of the guys you see in this class, do you get that feeling even along the offensive line that Notre Dame is recruiting guys that move different or look different on the offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of really good athletes of the group. I mean, to your point, right? Sean, after I remember when the Feldman's freak list of the Athletic, Bruce Feldman comes out with that list every year. People asked us, what 2023 players could maybe be on the freaks list eventually. And one of my first guys that I put out there was Charles Jagasaw, man. Like, I think Charles Jagasaw is a freak of nature athlete at the at the offensive tackle position, man. Like, he is just a freak. And then you look at Joe Otting. I mean, I'll say this, Sean. I don't think people talk about Joe Otting enough in this regard. If Joe Otting is able to hold 290 plus, 300 pounds at 6'4", somewhere in that ballpark, right? That kid is a really athletic player. Like, they pull him a lot. They work in space. Like, he does a lot of stuff out of Hayden High School in Kansas. If he's able to maintain the athleticism, then he'll be one of the more athletic centers in college football, man. Like, he can absolutely move. So you talk about him, talk about Charles Jagasaw. Those are the real big athletes up front for me. And then, Sullivan Absher is a good athlete. Is he on tier with a Charles Jagasaw? Not in my opinion, but like, he's a good athlete. I think that Christopher Terek and Sam Pendleton for guards are good to solid athletes, right? Like, they're pretty good. So, but I think that that's the difference, right? That you kind of see between playing left tackle, playing right tackle, playing inside. Like there's just a slightly different caliber of athlete, which is fun to watch. It's fun to watch though, for sure. So Sean, that's going to put the wraps on the offensive line talk for 2023, man. I can't believe we're here only a couple days away, a couple weeks away from signing day, but the offensive line class is wrapped up, man. That is delivered to Harry Heath stands. We're done with the commitment of Christopher Terek, which
Harry did a pretty good job in your opinion.
Yes. I mean, he came in and he closed on the guys that he needed to close on, right? The Charles Jagasaws of the world needed to close on him. He got Elijah Page in the class. You know, that was a slight miss. I mean, we'll call it what it is, right? But I think the recovery is the biggest thing for me. He identified a couple nice players immediately when he got here in Sam Pendleton. He identified Joe Otting. Then he identifies Christopher Terek. And don't forget, because we don't talk about this enough, but he pulled a little bit of an upset with Sullivan Absher. I did not feel great about Sullivan Absher to Notre Dame there for a little bit. But he, I think, flipped that script very early in the process as soon as he got here. And he gets Sullivan Absher out of North Carolina, which, again, like I thought Sullivan Absher was going to go to Clemson. I did for the longest time. So like a couple weeks before he made his decision public, I was like, I just really don't know. So, yeah, I think year one, bringing this group in with the returners of Blake Fisher, Joe Alt, Rocco Spindler, Billy Schrouth, that group, there's a lot to be excited about on the offensive line. So that's going to wrap it up here as far as our offensive line talk for the day. Exciting times for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Sean, I really do want to get into, man, because we're almost wrapped up for 2023. Only a couple spots left in the 2023 class. So I want to quickly just kind of go through where Notre Dame is with some of the other recruits that are on the board, because there's only a couple spots left. So right now, Notre Dame has 3 players that are really left on the board, right? There's always guys that could be added at some point, but only 3 weeks from signing day, there's 3 guys that you need to pay attention to. We're going to break each one of them down a little bit. We're going to talk about where they would fit potentially with Notre Dame if they did choose the Irish. A couple of them I know have commitment dates already set. So we'll be kind of closing the book here on the 2023 class. I think, Sean, for me, it starts with Caleb Smith, who's a player that I know Notre Dame likes a lot. A 2023 wide receiver out of Reedy High School in the state of Texas. Notre Dame already has 2 wide receivers from the state of Texas, committed in this class. Jaden Greathouse and Braylon James, who are incredibly talented football players. They also have Micah Bell from the state of Texas as well in this class. They have done an exceptional job. Peyton Bowen, of course, the 2023 safety, 5-star recruit in the state of Texas. They've done a tremendous job recruiting the state of Texas, and they're hoping to push that number to 5 in this class, and the 3rd wide receiver out of the state. Now, Caleb Smith, this is kind of where we are with the Caleb Smith conversation, Sean, and then we'll kind of break down a little bit of what we think about his game and how he fits. So Caleb Smith was committed to Texas Tech. He's visiting for the Clemson game, and originally it was set to be an unofficial visits, right? Because Notre Dame has a policy. You can't take an official visit to Notre Dame if you're committed to another school. So they're sitting there, and it's an unofficial, and then last minute, literally the day before the visit, he commits from Texas Tech, which makes that visit an official visit for Caleb Smith. So the initial thought is, oh man, that flip happened. That flip happened for a reason, right? That's that you have to decommit in order to flip to a school. Well, he does. He has a great visit. We've reported on that. Does a tremendous job, I think, Notre Dame during that visit. And now over the last couple weeks, I feel like it's just been kind of almost like a Christopher Terek situation for Caleb Smith. It's like, hey, man, I really loved the staff in Texas Tech. I like what they're doing. I built deep relationships with them. I see what Notre Dame can also bring to me. So I think he's been in a little bit of a back and forth with where, he would want to go. So we expect this one to be figured out, obviously, before signing day, somewhere in the near future. I'll say that we feel good about where he is with Notre Dame. We feel good about Notre Dame's chances. Just the question is, did they do enough to close it? When will it close? Those things are still questions that we have kind of moving forward. But we feel good about Caleb Smith, Sean. And I know we've talked about this, and I know that we both agree on this. we do like how Caleb Smith potentially fits into this class. He's something that Notre Dame needs, in my opinion.
I'm going to pick up right where you left off. And I just had a discussion with former Notre Dame wide receiver Chris Fink. And he talked about the importance, especially for young quarterbacks, of having a guy on the interior that's a good route runner. And I think the fit for this young man is that he is one of those guys on the inside that can run routes, catch the ball, and run after the catch, because he also gives you value in the return game. And Chris Fink talked about, like, Michael Mayer is one thing, but one of the most underrated injuries all year was losing Avery Davis right before the season. And he might not be the best, most talented wide receiver, but he was vitally important, not only for Tommy Rees, but for those quarterbacks. And Caleb Smith, we have guys that are pretty much outside guys that can go up, make plays, get deep, stretch the field. Jaden Greathouse is a bigger guy that can pretty much Jaden Greathouse can play whatever position you want him to play in the wide receiver room. But this guy is kind of a specialty guy, in my opinion, and he's totally different than everybody else that they have in their room. And he finishes off and gives Chancey Stuckey exactly what he talks about, that starting five type of vibe in the wide receiver room. So that's the value he brings, and that's the fit that Caleb Smith is to the wide receiver room and to this recruiting class. And just hearing that from Chris Fink, who played that position. And he pointed out, like, dude, I had Chase on one side and Miles on the other side, but there was a comfort having me on the inside. Deshaun Watson, he had Mike Williams, all these big, great wide receivers on the outside, but who did he look for on third down?
Hunter Renfrow.
Where's he at? Right? So that's that comfort, and Caleb Smith, I think, can become that guy for the young quarterbacks, for Kenny Minchie, for CJ Carr down the line, and on third and down, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. Yeah, I might have Michael Mayer or the next great tight end, that I'm sure is coming down the pipeline for Notre Dame. But guess who else? That will only make that tight end better and your outside guys better. And that's why he's important, in my opinion, to this recruiting class and to that wide receiver room.
No doubt about it. I mean, we had a question that I wanted to pull up because it's exactly what we're talking about right now, Sean. Ray Holcraft, Ray, thank you for the question, said, why is Caleb Smith so coveted? How is he different than the other 2023 wide receivers? And I think you just said it perfectly, Sean.
Yeah.
He is a true slot wide receiver for Notre Dame on the next slide, if Notre Dame's able to close on him. And Notre Dame does not really have that guy in this class, to your point, right? Yeah. Jaden Greathouse is more of an outside-in type of player. Braylon James is a pure outside guy who is just going to run by dudes, right? Mm-hmm. You have Rico Flores who can do a little stuff in the slot too, but he's more of an outside guy. But then you have Dylan Edwards who, yes, in theory is going to play a lot of slot receiver, but he's not a true wide receiver right now, right? He's that gadget dude. He's going to play some running back. He's going to play some wide receiver, going to be used in space, going to get end arounds, jet sweeps. He's that type of dude, right? There's no true slot receiver in the true sense of the word. Guys that are going to run routes from the slot, be dependable in third down, kind of that safety blanket. I think Caleb Smith brings a lot of those attributes to the table, which is why they value him, Ray. That's why. Talked about Tayshawn Lyons. I love Tayshawn Lyons' game. I think that whoever ends up getting Tayshawn is going to get an absolute stud on the next level. But I think the breaking point for Notre Dame was, hey, we really like Tayshawn. We really like Caleb Smith. Who fits better in what we need? And I think that they think Caleb Smith fits better. I think that's what it comes down to. So that's where we are with Caleb. Feel good about where they are. When does it end? How quickly does it end? And did Notre Dame do enough to flip his mind completely? That's the questions that we're working through. But again, feel good about where Notre Dame is right now. We do. Next guy that I want to talk about, Sean, that's on the board for Notre Dame. Brandon Hillman, running back athletes out of Churchland High School in the state of Virginia. Now, I want to put this out there, Sean. We've talked about this a ton. Where is Brandon Hillman going to play if he ends up at Notre Dame? I have no idea. I think that there is a real world where he could play offense, he could play running back, but I think defensively he could play safety, he could play rover, he might even be able to play linebacker down the line, man. Like he might be able to. He's got that type of body and that type of physicality. And I think Notre Dame, from what I'm gathering, I feel like they like the fact that he has so many possibilities. He's a true athlete in this class. So I think Notre Dame sees him as a versatile weapon that can kind of do a bunch of different things, and they're going to let that one develop in their minds if he does choose Notre Dame and see where he fits ultimately. I know Brian Mason's going to love him, though. 6'2", 200-pound physical athlete who could run down at some kickoffs. Like, that's sounds great to me, right? But that's kind of the player that we're looking at, Sean. I know we've talked about where positionally he fits best. I think the answer, though, is that this kid's a really good athlete, man. Really good athlete.
Ultimately, it's going to be up to him initially, right? They'll come in, he'll go through, the tried and true testing of one Matt Balis, and then the staff will get him into the spring and workouts and things of that nature, and they'll try to figure out what's best for him. For me, I like kids to come in and to know, like, this is what I want to do, right? Look at Xavier Watts. Like, they toyed around with moving him back to wide receiver after making a switch to safety last year. And now you start to see his ascent. He's playing better. And I'm glad they listened to him, because when he was asked, he was willing to make the sacrifice for the team, but he was very clear that the defensive side of the ball is where he wanted to be. So,
and Sean Watts is their best safety right now over the last 2 games, in my opinion.
You said it, I didn't. You said it, I didn't.
It's where we are. It's where we are right now. Brandon Joseph hasn't been playing very well, and Xavier Watts is playing good football right now, man. He is their best safety, in my opinion, right this second.
So, look, this kid is going to come in, and you want to get him in the position where he can start learning immediately. Learn this position. This is where we want you. I think he has the build. Rover would be perfect. He has the body type. You can see where he can add a little extra weight, still keep the same athleticism, the same speed. And there you go. But if he wants a shot at quarterback and he believes in his abilities, then, you give the kid a shot early. And it won't hurt to give him a shot in spring to prove himself, because ultimately the kid is going to look at who's in the room with him and look at his chances and have to recognize, I want to play. Ultimately, I just want to get on the field. That's what every kid wants to do. And if I can't get on the field here, where can I get on the field the quickest? Tell me. And then that's when the staff and Hillman, if he chooses Notre Dame, will end up having that conversation. But you have to feel excited this late in the game to get an athlete like him. And he's a late bloomer to a lot of schools. Blessing is not even the right word. Fortunate, something that just fell out of the sky, fell into your lap, like whatever you want to say. That's it with this kid, and not only Notre Dame, but a lot of schools that have jumped in late on his recruiting.
It's exciting too, Sean, for me, because I agree. I would prefer Hillman at Rover. Ideally, I feel like he just fits that spot so well.
Yeah.
But think about it this way. I'm going to make it like a triangle. I know you're a basketball guy, right? So think about the triangle for a second. We'll talk this way. So 3 positions. There is the field safety, there's the boundary safety, and there's the rover, right? Mm-hmm. Those positions can be slightly interchangeable if you have the right athletes out there at the position, because rover is a hybrid safety nickel linebacker spot, right? So there's a lot of safeties that could play that. We've seen Ramon Henderson a little bit in that spot this year, right? Like we've seen that. You think of, look, when Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah ended up graduating from Notre Dame, he was definitely more linebacker than safety, but early on, I would argue his his junior year that he was a little more safety than linebacker. And then he got kind of a little bit bigger and he's got kind of more comfortable playing in the box and doing all that type of stuff. Right. So I'm thinking about it like this, Sean. It's like, okay, you have the 2 safety spots, you have Rover. Right now in the class, you have Peyton Bowen, you have Adon Schuler, you have Ben Minich, and you potentially, hopefully, are going to be able to get a commitment from Brandon Hillman. That's now 4 dynamic athletes, different athletes, but my mind starts going in this way, and I want to hear your opinion on this, Sean. I could see, look, Peyton Bowen's definitely the more true free safety type, but he can play either safety spot, right? Yeah. Adon Schuler, I wouldn't put it out of I would not be shocked if eventually Adon Schuler is a safety, but eventually if he's a big nickel, he's a rover. I wouldn't be shocked. Ben Minich, I think, could play either safety spots. Brandon Hillman, I think, could play safety and could play rover. You could have a lot of fun with those 4 guys at those 3 different positions, in my opinion.
And you're not even mentioning Ramon Henderson, bro.
No, I was keeping it to the 2023 group, man. Like, it's so much fun.
I'm just saying, now you're looking at the chess pieces that are starting to be added to this team. And you throw Hillman in the mix if he indeed decides to choose Notre Dame on the 7th. Now Notre Dame in that secondary becomes a matchup nightmare, right? Because let's be honest, right? Because what we're talking about here is like building depth. Right? You have the emergence of a Benjamin Morrison, right? We firmly believe Saturday night looks totally different if Tariq Bracy and Cam Hart play. Defensively, we're not talking about, I can't predict the scoreboard, but defensively, that unit, their approach and things they do looks totally different on Saturday night. Now, let's say Cam Hart comes back. Let's say Clarence Lewis wants to stay and acclimates himself to the inside or playing some type of mixture between cornerback, safety and certain things and certain nickels. And now Ramon Henderson becomes, okay, he loves playing closest to the line of scrimmage. Do we toy with him being rover? Or do we keep him at his position and connect him with Xavier Watts? And Xavier Watts, where do we allow him to play free? Right? Do we move him up and play strong? Now you start adding the 23 guys. And Peyton Bowen, for me, he gets nicked up. He's gotten nicked up a lot. Mm-hmm. He's gotten nicked up a lot. So would I prefer him to play free rather than being the guy in the box that's part of a lot of physical play to try to help him stay a little bit, healthier? All these things come into my mind. Adon Schuler, who you would say, I don't want to disrespect him, because you look at him play and you say, oh, man, that's your strong safety. But that's being disrespectful to the actual athletic ability he has, because he can play a little free. You look at his size and his makeup and you say, oh, man, maybe we can move him to a big nickel and certain things. This is like, dude, Coach O'Leary, yo.
He's got some toys, man.
I'm envious. I'm envious, right? Because you would much rather have too much than not enough in any positional room. And I think that's what we're starting to see. Like, every positional coach is getting to the point where they're going to have a lot in the room, and they're just going to be tasked with having to figure it out. And what coach wouldn't want to have to figure it out, right? Playing time. That's the least of my concerns. I have to figure out the playing time for these guys. No problem.
I mean, Sean, do you remember when Kyle Hamilton was a freshman and they kind of did a lot of 3 safety stuff because they still had Jalen Elliott and Alohi Gilman, and it made sense, right? Yeah. I could literally see next year them saying, hey, our starting safeties are Xavier Watts and, let's say, Ramon Henderson, right? Just for argument's sake. And then when it's obvious passing situation, you go, Peyton, you're a free safety. Xavier, you're going to rover. Ramon, you're going to rover. It's there's so many possibilities, which makes it really, really intriguing if they're able to get a Brandon Hillman, kind of circling it back, because Brandon, again, is those type of positionless football players. But it's not a knock. That's saying that you can do a lot of different things for a team. And I think that that's where Notre Dame wants to go.
Yeah.
Because what we saw at Marcus Freeman at Cincinnati was that Rover in his system was like Arquan Bush at one point, who was a true corner, right? Like he's a 6 foot, 195 pound kid.
Yeah.
Right now he's playing more true linebackers at the Rover spot, but like, does he want to go with an Adon Schuler down the line? I don't know. It's just a thought, you know? Does he want to go with a Xavier Watts type guy down the line? Ramon Henderson? It's possible, man. Yeah. It's possible. So just think it's interesting to think about how the Brandon Hillmans of the world, the Adon Schulers, the Ben Miniches, like all those guys, how they could potentially fit with this program, which is really intriguing. That secondary is going to be good, man. It's going to be good.
You mentioned my boy Benny.
Yeah,
Benny
man.
From the block. Yo, the surprise of the safety haul in 23 for all of us at Irish Breakdown. Like, you talk about someone's senior film being vastly improved.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we knew who he played next to and how easy it was for him to be overshadowed for a guy like Malik Hartford. But he proved invaluable this is when it mattered. He made plays, but when they needed a play at the biggest moment, it was usually him.
Offense or defense.
Offense or defense that made the play. And that's just having a knack. You know, Hamilton just had a knack for making a play or anticipating, even when he was a freshman. And you see that on film from Ben Minich, just having the ability at key times during a game to go ahead and make that play. And that's anticipation and just understanding the situation, not being afraid of the moment and trusting yourself. And you get those attributes, like you said. Brian Mason might be the happiest person. Like on signing day, the positional coaches are going to be ecstatic, but Brian Mason is going to be sitting there saying, I get all of them. I get to use all of them. So, yeah, you're right. The value and how everything's going to be elevated from all these guys is. I know Brian Driscoll had his guy faced Arch Manning this week. I know he had a field day watching that film and reading about that matchup.
Sean, we're going to talk about that in a couple minutes. I did want to bring up this comment, though, real quick from Donnie Cruz, because I do think that it's fascinating and it fits into why we're talking about this conversation, right? The multi-level that this defense can go. So Donnie Cruz, and thank you for the comment, Donnie, said, now, if our safeties go to Rover, why did we recruit Rover and linebackers so hard? We end up losing those so-called great linebackers. Donnie, I think that Joshua Burnham's why you keep recruiting those guys, right? Because the thing that what I'm trying to voice here is not that I think Adon Schuler ultimately is going to be a full-time Rover, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Xavier Watts is going to be a full-time Rover. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that you give your defense possibilities, right? And I mean, think about it right now, right? We've talked about like Nolan Ziegler as a guy that, could play some Rover, could play Will. And I think that those possibilities are why you keep recruiting the way that you're doing, because guys move in as they develop physically. That's just how it works, right? So there's possibilities out there. So there's no telling. I mean, Drake Bowen maybe maybe Drake Bowen's a Mike linebacker down the line. It's possible, right? Maybe Nolan Ziegler is a Will full-time. Maybe Junior Tuihalamaka is a defensive end, is a Viper down the line. Like all those things I think are on the table for this defense. So you keep getting good athletes, and where they end up fitting is where they end up fitting. You figure that out, though, right? Because bodies develop differently at different times. We'll see what it looks like. But ultimately, that's why you keep getting versatile athletes and getting your best 11 on the field. And also what it brings is that we live in a world now, NFL-wise. I'm going to go NFL game because I know it's different than college, but like we're going to go there because that's where trends usually come from. In the NFL right now, there is a single football team that plays base defense more than 50% of the time. A single football team. Which means, what do we live in, Sean? We're living in the world of the sub-package, man. That's where we are.
Absolutely.
So there's going to be times where you have 5 defensive backs on the field. There's going to be times where you have 6 defensive backs on the field. Not everything is as standard as it used to be, where you're running a 4-3 and you're running a 4-3 every single play. No, there's 4-2-5, there's 3-3-5, there's going to be dime looks. There's going to be situations where guys are asked to do things that aren't technically what they are, right? There's going to be times where Ben Minich is down playing slot. I'm sure that he's going to be down playing a little bit of nickel. Is he technically a nickel? Nah, he's not. He's not. But can he play it? That's different, right? That's using player strengths to give a defense possibilities and different looks, Donnie. So that's why I think you keep recruiting the way you are. Get talented athletes, get the best 11 on the field in the right situations. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with it, man.
And people might not want to hear it, but you recruit to a schedule that's different than everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
There is no luxury of knowing the conference.
Yep.
And knowing the systems in the conference each and every year. You know, you have a few changes with coaches every now and then, but pretty much you know what this team is going to do.
Yep.
Notre Dame's schedule changes every year. And there are different offenses and different systems that you're facing week to week. Then you're going to have an academy team. And it's going to be totally different how you go at them and what you deploy. And it just gives you, look, we didn't know Josh Burnham was going to be one of the fastest and quickest edge rushers in the program.
Well, and Sean, you got, and they literally, sorry to cut you off, but like they literally got Josh Burnham, who's about 6'4", 215 pounds this day he stepped on campus. And before spring's over, he's 230 something pounds. And you're like, oh, his body's outgrowing Will and Mike.
Right.
Like he's a Viper. That's why you do it.
That's why you do it, right? And evaluation for your players doesn't stop when they sign and you get them on campus.
Yep.
You're still evaluating them through weight training, through workouts, through spring practice. You're evaluating these guys because you have to figure it out as a coaching staff. That's your job. They're here now. Figure it out. Figure it out. Not only to get the best 11 on the field, but to make sure that the next 11 can come in and have an impact.
Right.
That's coaching. And so that's why you want players. That's why you want a guy like Drake Bowen to play inside. But it's Drake, you know what? In this package, we want you to rush off the edge. Okay, coach, I can do that.
Yeah.
And I can be good at it. So it's not moving safeties to rover in sub packages, whether it's nickel or dime or big nickel, whether it's a nickel that might have two interior guys with two linebackers rushing versus two defensive ends rushing because you want to get more speed on the field. There are a lot of different things you can do, and you go get the length and athleticism to be able to do those specific things and make your ability to combat this world of, look, I would have loved to have more speed on the field against Caleb Williams on Saturday night.
Yep.
It would have been great to have, don't get me wrong, because I thought middle of the first quarter to halftime, the front four did a really good job of making him run and getting him out of the pocket and making it difficult for Caleb Williams.
Yep.
But I would have loved for those two edge guys to be faster guys.
To finish. Yep.
To be able to finish.
More range.
More range, right? And now via recruiting in certain situations and certain teams, now you can do that.
Yep. And it's I mean, Sean, it's a great point. I think the team speed is another thing that you just hit on that is a perfect conversation, right? Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah showed up to campus and he was about 6 foot, 190 pounds. He didn't know what he was going to play. He had no idea. Probably thought he was I think Notre Dame thought he was a safety eventually, and eventually he's a rover. And now he's playing weak side linebacker for the Cleveland Browns in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
Guys develop, and you know what's even freakier, man, is it's great to get these freak show defensive ends, but you know who else could be a freak show defensive end? Joshua Burnham, who has literally played linebacker and quarterback on the high school level, and is now your defensive end in your system, right? Those big defensive ends, the Tyson Fords of the world, if he continues to project inside as a defensive tackle, that's a freak show defensive tackle athletically, man.
Right.
These big safeties that are now getting pushed up to linebacker, these corners that are getting pushed back to safety, that's where speed evolves, man.
Right.
And the speed evolution, I think, is something that needs to continue. And it's exciting. It's really exciting. And that's what Brandon Hillman plays, folks. Where is he going to end up ultimately if he ends up at Notre Dame? No idea. I can speculate. I think he looks like a Rover long term. We can speculate about it. It's also possible he's a safety. It's also possible he's a weak side linebacker. It's also possible he's a running back. All these things are possible. Could he be a slot receiver? Wouldn't have put it out of the question. Like it's possible, which is a good problem to have because now you're just getting good football players on the field in interesting spots. So that's the second guy that's on the board. The last guy that we know of that's on the board, Sean, is Khalil Barnes, who's a defensive back out of the state of Georgia. He's an interesting player because I think he fits really that mold of wide receiver, defensive back, whether that's cornerback or at safety. He brings some interesting profile to the game, right? I think he really likes Notre Dame. I think that Notre Dame likes him, back and forth. The question is, just when is it going? Oh, and I should have mentioned, I'm sorry, jumping ahead a little bit. Brandon Hillman is scheduled to make his commitment to whatever school he chooses on December 7th. Yeah. So we will keep obviously updating everyone and how we feel kind of moving forward to that. Khalil Barnes is a player that also has a December date in mind before signing day, who has been high on Notre Dame, has been to Notre Dame, a player that recently named a top 3 about a week and a half ago of Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Clemson. So I'm told that each school, I think, thinks of him a little differently. I think that Oklahoma sees him purely as a defensive back. I think Clemson is open to either spot, but more likely defensive back. And I think Notre Dame is open to both sides. And Khalil, I think, wants an opportunity to maybe play wide receiver on the next level, right? So, I mean, for me, Sean, I think he's a good football player. I think he would fit in at Notre Dame if he ends up at Notre Dame. And I think, again, he's another player that brings you versatility. Is he a wide receiver? Is he a defensive back? I think the answer is that he can play a little bit of both.
Ryan, I'm sorry. Something's being said here by this coaching staff. And maybe we can convey it and interpret it. Versatile athletes late in this recruiting class, guys that can do multiple things, but they have speed, athleticism, size, length. What is this Notre Dame coaching staff? Once again, you don't stop evaluating players just because they sign to your program. And I would say the evaluation ramps up once you get them. Mm-hmm. This is Notre Dame saying we need more of this. The fact that this class, which we thought, let's be honest, we thought it was going to be about 22 to 23 guys. This is our first year covering the recruiting trail at Notre Dame. We're saying, okay, they're going to get to 23. Should be a pretty good class. They'll be in the top 5. And as time went on, we're like, they might get to 25. Wait a minute. They might actually sign 27 guys in this class. That's because as the season went on, the coaching staff was continuing to evaluate the entire program. They just weren't evaluating their current team. They were evaluating the entire program. Oh, man, we didn't think we might need this, but we need more of this moving forward. Oh, you know what? We need more of this moving forward. We didn't even think about that. We didn't even see that. This is just that's why, I don't know if you saw it, the speech that Davis Shaw gave on Saturday night made me want to stand up, and anyone that's ever coached in college, literally give them a round of applause. Because I think as fans, we take it for granted. When he talked about the year-round stress of coaching in college football and how that wears on you for 16 straight years, and how he literally just got to the point you know what, man, it's just time. The record is what it is, but just for my life. It's just time. This is a grind. And I love how the staff has gone about handling their business in this grind. And I think the way they're approaching this 23 class, they're giving you a message.
Yep.
That if you listen to them, they're showing you that they're figuring out the flaws.
Yep.
Flaws that they see now, right? Because sometimes you have to wait until the actual players that you have go out and play. And then you can see things on film and things that you might not have thought were a flaw now become something, we have to get a little bit more of this. And I think we're seeing that there's an urgency. They're not sitting and waiting and saying, oh, we can get that in 24. There's an urgency. And I think there's going to be an urgency at certain spots in the transfer portal for them as well. So I think that's the message that you're getting from your coaching staff, that they're starting to see everything that needs to be improved. And they're not sitting back and waiting for it to happen. They're going out and being aggressive in the 23 class. And I think they're going to do the same thing in the transfer portal.
Yep. I really think that and we're going to talk about transfer portal during the mailbag because we had a couple questions on there. But I think, Sean, for me, the last couple pieces of this puzzle potentially for Notre Dame, whether it's pushed to 27 or 28 remains to be seen. We'll see, obviously, with some departures this offseason, whether that is the transfer portal, whether that is graduation, whether that is, declaring for the NFL draft, whatever it is, we'll see what the final numbers look like. But I think it's a testament to Notre Dame recruiting, getting great athletes, the fact that the last couple guys we're talking about are Brandon Hillman, are Khalil Barnes, guys that can play multiple positions on the college level. So it's really interesting to kind of see. That's going to kind of conclude a little bit of this conversation over the recruiting left for 2023. But Sean, I wanted to, before we get to the mailbag, I want to talk a little bit about an article that I think it's live on irishbreakdown.com. If it's not, it's going to be live sometime today. But every week I talk about just some of the premier performances in all of college football, right? So, or in high school football, from the commits in Notre Dame class. So I picked 5 this week, Sean, because the list is getting smaller and smaller because some guys are still alive in the playoffs. Some guys just won state championships this past weekend. So it's been wild to kind of see the ride that some of these guys have gone over, Sean. So I want to start us off, though, with a couple running backs that are committed to Notre Dame in the 2023 class. Guys that are on this list basically every week. Jeremiah Love, running back out of Christian Brothers in St. Louis, Missouri. They defeated Lee Summit North, which, if you're not familiar with Lee Summit North, you're probably going to hear a little bit about him in the 2024 class because Notre Dame is on Williams and Winery, who is a really good defensive end. He's considered like a 5-star by a couple different platforms. He plays for Lee Summit North. Christian Brothers was able to win the state championship, Sean, 35-28 in that football game. I kept hearing that Christian Brothers was saving Jeremiah Love into the playoffs, right? And I was like, I don't know if you can really do it like that. Well, I was wrong. They saved him for the playoffs, man. And Jeremiah Love had his best game of the season in the state championship game. He ran for 212 yards, had another 106 yards receiving, 318 total yards of offense in the state championship game. 5 touchdowns, Sean. 5 tutties for Jeremiah Love. Oh, by the way, the other running back that's committed in the 2023 class, Jane Lamar, out of Lake Stevens, they won their playoff game over Graham Kapowson, 42-28. Sean, I said Jeremiah Love had 5 touchdowns, right? Is that what I said? Well, Jane Lamar had 6. So the 2 running backs that are committed to Notre Dame in the 2023 class, Jeremiah Love and Jane Lamar, combined for 11 offensive touchdowns this past week, Sean. So again, we always circle back to this. Running back room is already a big position of strength for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
It's going to get even better very soon here.
Goes back to the previous question, right? Why are we doing this? And why are we moving the guys that we got to this and to that? If you have a 3-headed monster running back, why are you recruiting other top running backs? get the talent, figure it out later. That's what great programs do. Get the talent. Why do you? It seems like every year, doesn't it seem like Georgia has a three-headed monster running back every year?
Yep. This
Every
is
year.
this is like one of the worst ones they've had, Sean, and it's still got Kenny McIntosh and all these dudes. Yeah.
So, dude, this is how you build an elite program. You get the talent in and figure it out later. And if you lose guys due to the competition and the transfer portal, then that's par for the course, right? But this is the way things work in a elite program. So Jeremiah Love this year, man.
Sean, let me read the numbers for this year real quick before you go on. Ready? So again, I said that they haven't used him a ton during the season. They really haven't.
But that was the closest game they've had all year, right?
Yes, that was the closest game they had all year. Sean, on the season, though, 1,292 yards, averaged about 10 yards a carry, 22 touchdowns, and he also had 5 receiving touchdowns, 27 total touchdowns. And I think he only touched the ball 130-something times this year, man, which is it's a good percentage of touchdowns to touches, I'd say. It's a pretty good percentage.
Man, look, what he's done this year has I almost felt like he was a junior college player playing high school football. Like he wasn't at college level yet, but he was kind of like at Power 5 level yet, but he was kind of like in between. But he was just so much better than everybody else he played. It is. If you go watch the games, it was just epic. It was just the way he would run past guys, the way he would catch the ball in the long touchdowns, and just, I mean, he's outrunning Christian Gray. And it's just like, man, I can't wait, man. I just can't imagine. Dude, can you imagine the first meeting when Dylan McCullough turns the corner and walks in the room? And he sees Jeremiah Love.
Who might be the most talented running back they have the minute he enters the room, by the way. He might be.
And then he sees Jaden Lamar. And then he sees his boy Jadarian Price.
Back healthy.
We haven't even gotten to the other guys yet. And then it's Chris Tyree, and then it's Aldrick, and then it's like, oh man. The first thing he's gonna say is I have to figure out how to get all of you guys involved.
Oh, and by the way, the season after that, they're trending in a pretty good direction with Aeneas Williams right now too. So maybe he's in the next class. It's like
and people want to feel down about the recruiting class because of certain losses. It's like, look, man, the recovery has been wonderful. Mm-hmm. You wanted difference makers. You have. I don't even want to count how many difference makers exist in this class because I'm not focused on stars. We watch film. Mm-hmm. Plenty of difference makers in this recruiting class. So, yes. In the running back position is top. They might have, correct me if I'm wrong, if we're just going top 10, mm-hmm. It's safe to say that they might have 4 top 10 position rankings in this recruiting class. Is that fair?
I think it's fair. I mean, because let's look at it like this. You're talking about running back, right? I mean, the only other running back room in 2023 that I would say I would take over Notre Dame's right now is probably Bama's with Richard Young and Justice Haynes, right? Like that's pretty darn good. It's pretty darn good, right?
Yeah. So,
I mean, aside from that, though, I mean, yeah, they're definitely a top 10 class. There's no doubt. I mean, I think Notre Dame's running back room is definitely top 5.
Right.
If not number 2. Like, right. I think that you have a legitimate conversation if you're able to keep both those guys in the class. Wide receivers, that's a top 10 class. Maybe top
10 class.
Maybe top 3 or 4 class in the nation this year. When you're talking about Jaden Greathouse and Braylon James and Rico Flores and Dylan Edwards and maybe also getting Caleb Smith. Like it's hard to find much better. I mean, Ohio State's got a heck of a class for sure, but I mean, that's really, really good. I mean, then after that show, it's like offensive line class. You make that argument, right?
Yeah.
Linebacker group. I mean, yes. Jane Osbury, Drake Bowen, and Preston Zinter. That's pretty darn good as well.
They're doing good, right?
Cornerback, the two guys they have. Safety, definitely. Safety's there. They might have the best safety group in 2023. So, I mean, you said 4, Sean. Might be 6.
Yeah,
it might be 6, man. Because then you go like this, right? Quarterback, you usually only get one quarterback in the class, right? But if you think Kenny Minchie's a top 10 quarterback in the 2023 class, then that's also a group, right? So, yeah. Which, I mean, I would argue that he is a top 10 quarterback in the class. I think he's exceptional. I do. I mean, Alabama's got 2 commits, so they have to be at the top, right? They have 2 pretty highly touted kids, so that's number 1. But otherwise, you got to if you only have one quarterback in the class, you think he's a top 10 kid, then they got to be in the group too. So Notre Dame may literally have 6 to 7 top 10 groups in the position groups in the 2023 class nationally, which is wild, man. That's wild. That's a great point, Sean. I didn't even think about that.
No,
Man.
Just to let you know the difference makers that are coming, because then people are like, we lost this guy, we lost that guy. Okay, all right. Go rank the positions nationally and see how many times Notre Dame's in the top 10 or the top 5.
Yeah.
It's like we don't have to hype up this class. They hype themselves up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I'm so excited about the running back room, though. I know that's very archaic, right? Like people are like, "Oh, running backs don't matter. Passing game, sure, I get it, man. I get it." And I'm only 31, so I'm still hip to the times. But it's exciting to see what this running back room is going to look like moving forward. And Sean, the guy's blocking for him. Probably should have thrown this stat in when we were talking about the offensive line class, Christopher Terek coming in. But a part of this week 14 high school commit roundtable that I'm putting out on irishbreakdown.com. I also had Sullivan Absher in there, Sean, who they qualified South Point for the North Carolina State Championship at their level. So they beat Eastern Guilford 28-25. It was a little bit of a down day for the offense, for the rushing game of South Point, Sean. They only ran for 282 yards and 3 touchdowns and averaged 5.8 yards a carry. I say super sarcastically because on the season, they average over 300 yards rushing a game, and they've had 60 rushing touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
Sullivan Absher, man, there's going to be some work that needs to come in as far as pass blocking is concerned, because he's not asked to do it on his level at South Point. But my boy can be a dog in the run game the minute he gets to campus, especially playing offensive tackle with the ability he has, man. He is going to be he's what they need as far as the temperament that he plays with, the physicality. I'm a big fan of Sullivan Absher, and now he's playing in a state championship, which is pretty exciting for him.
You should be a big fan of Sullivan Absher.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think you pointed out, along with Brian, that talked about it with Brian Smith just a tad bit yesterday during the Christopher Terek commitment show. Dude, these offensive linemen all have gotten better in their senior years. And that's what you want. That's what you want to see. Like, you don't want to see a guy that levels off. It's like, okay, maybe they can get him better once they get him in the building. No, you have ascending players, which makes you feel like they have more room for growth when they do get to Notre Dame, whether it's physically. And that's the thing. I think we talked about this maybe 2 weeks ago on one of our shows, how physically this class is ready to go. Like Matt Balis, I mean, you might just be refining things because, from a weight standpoint, they physically can come in and play the college game. They can come in and play the college game. And that's what you want, right? That's what you want. You don't want a lot of Emil Wagners in your O-line room. You can have one or two, right? And the way things are trending for Emil Wagner is like the person we don't even talk about. It's almost like we forget about him, right? And he might be your future left tackle at Notre Dame, like when Joe Alt leaves. Like, it's that serious. I don't do. Who would you want? I think I can stump you right here, Ryan Roberts.
Okay, stop me.
First day of meetings in the spring. You're walking down from the coaches' meeting with Marcus Freeman, getting ready to go into your positional room. And you got any room to walk in, any choice of your positional room to walk into. Which one are you choosing? I'm very interested. It's in which room would you want to walk into as a coach?
It's an interesting question. I think running back. Man. I do.
Still?
It's close between offensive line and running back for me. Actually, could it be safety? I don't know, man. I don't know. That's a tough one, Sean. That's actually a tough one. I would love to hear other people's responses to that, because it's like, you have that running back room that we've talked about a ton, right? Like, you're going to see Audric and Jadarian and Jeremiah coming in and Logan Diggs and just ridiculous. Maybe Chris Tyree coming back. Like, that is a crazy room. But then offensive line wise, you got Big Blake and Joe Alton there. And then also you're seeing guys like Charles Jagasaw walking around, just kind of chomping at the bit to work with him, right? Like, that's pretty ridiculous. And then safety wise, maybe you have Brandon Joseph coming back, but Xavier Watts, you have Peyton Bowen coming in. I think for me, though, it'd be running back or it would be offensive line. Like, that would be my two spots, I think, man. That would be.
I'm going linebacker.
Oh, that's a good one too. It's a good one. Yeah.
I'm taking Snead. I'm taking Ziegler. I'm going in. I'm taking Prince Colley, and I'm taking all the guys. Who does JD have one more year left?
JD has another year. Yep.
He has another year left. And Maris, I might just walk in, and this is me talking. I have no knowledge of anything. I might just walk in and say, Maris, dude, you're moving the Viper.
Yeah.
You're moving the Viper. We're getting these guys on the field. Snead, we're not going to hand it to you, but you got to be the guy. Come win this thing. Come win this rover position. Come win it. We need you. Like, give me Drake. Heck yeah. Like, this is where you're going to be, son. Junior, you already teased it. Hey, Junior, I'm going to put some weight on you, man.
Mm-hmm.
Come off this edge.
Yeah.
Pass rush. Come a big – man, it's because there's so much you can do from a versatility standpoint. I would just love to be able to coach that and get guys in the right position. That would be like a really big challenge that I think I would love to take.
Yeah. That would be.
And Zinter is probably like the most underrated. I probably would see him at the first practice and be like, oh, really? Okay. All right. I got to figure out how to get you on the field as well. Man, you talk about a spoil of riches.
It's fun, man. It's fun.
Yeah.
Sean, you know what? If we even narrow this conversation, I would love to be in that rover conversation here for a second, because you talked about Jalen Snead, right?
Yeah.
Jack Kaiser's a solid football player. He's coming back most likely, but you have Jalen Snead coming back for his second year, right? Then you're bringing in a guy like a Jaden Osbury potentially playing rover as well. Like, woo, buddy, I can do something with that, man. Maybe Ramon Henderson gets cross-trained a little bit. Like, I can do something with that, man. I can do something with that. Yeah.
But I understand running back will probably be like – running back is definitely the sexiest position room for anybody looking at this recruiting class.
Yes. Yep, I agree completely to that one. Sean, we had a question that I'm going to save for the mailbag, because we're close to the mailbag, folks. Just want to work through a couple more players. Jaden Osbury is one, Sean, that you already teased a little bit. Brian Driscoll's guy in the 2023 class, University Lab in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So, Sean, they defeated in the playoffs this past week. Isidore Newman, 49-13. Why does Isidore Newman sound familiar? That's right. That's where Arch Manning goes. That's where Archie goes. Arch Manning, of course, 2023 quarterback, 5-star pretty much across the board from every recruiting ranking. Slightly overhyped, but still a very good football player, no doubt.
You just threw that little dig in there.
Just a little bit. I mean, he's still a really good player, man. Like he is. He's a top 5 quarterback in the class, in my opinion. Like,
he might end up starting next year, but you didn't hear from me.
I mean, we'll see, man. Quinn Ewers is a very puzzling football player, but we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, Arch Manning committed to Texas.
Yeah.
Jay Nosbury's team dominates Isidore Newman.
Man.
Sean, so their defense in general, they let up 13 points. They forced 4 turnovers, including 2 interceptions off of Arch. And by the way, Jay Nosbury became the school's all-time leader in tackles. And folks, I'm telling you right now, go look at some of the names that have come out of University Lab. It's pretty good, man. It's pretty good. The guy he passed, by the way, was Dylan Moses, former All-American linebacker out of Alabama, who was going to be a very high draft pick if not for the injuries that caught up to him at Alabama. So Jay Nosbury is leaving as a record setter, record holder for University Lab. Just came off of, Sean, big victory over a Isidore Newman team that has one of the top players in the entire nation. A big showing for the defense, big showing for Jay Nosbury, and a big accomplishment for who is quietly one of the best linebackers in the 2023 class.
You talk about a dominant. That's the dominant performance of the weekend. Like, I don't think anyone expected that, even in that region, in that area. And we have to say it, right? Okay. Because we get on our guy Brian Driscoll a lot. He says sometimes Ryan and I double team him on certain things and certain players. So, okay, you were right about Jay Nosbury. You were right. Okay, Brian, you were right. He's that good. And he's going to end up being that good at Notre Dame. Absolutely. You were right on Benjamin Morrison. It's like he gets one guy per class that he just absolutely identifies and says, this is going to be the guy. And Jay Nosbury might be that guy. And he actually might be the guy that pops as a true freshman, like Benjamin Morrison in that linebacker position. He just might, Ryan. Like, he's that good. He really is. And you talk about the pedigree of linebackers coming from that school. Dylan Moses early on came in.
Was a dude, man. He was a dude.
Yeah.
Extremely talented, extremely gifted. Unfortunately, the injuries caught up to Dylan Moses. But again, Jay Nosbury leaves. University Lab is the most decorated linebacker you could argue. Not most decorated because Dylan Moses was super hyped, but most accomplished linebacker in terms of production, right? Like, we can't argue that. He literally just cemented himself as the cream of the crop there. So would not be shocked that Jay Nosbury starts for Notre Dame next year as a freshman at some point during the season. Let's see where he ends up, but it'll be interesting to kind of follow. And last guy, Sean, got to talk about him every week. Peyton Bowen for Denton Guyer in the state of Texas. They defeated Byron Nelson 59-41, a high-scoring affair. One of the big highlights of the night for Denton Guyer was another punt return for a touchdown. They keep kicking to Peyton Bowen. I don't know why they keep doing this. Why are we still punting to Peyton Bowen? That was his 4th or 5th on the season. Stop punting to Peyton Bowen.
There's no way, like, even if you pooch punt, he's on the field. Right? So he finds a way, somehow, some way,
every week
to just make an impact and find his way to the end zone every week.
Every single week, man. Sean, I can't fathom it, man. They keep punting to him. I know he's got a broken hand or whatever, but like, guys, stop punting to him. For the love of everything that is holy, stop punting to Peyton Bowen. Stop. Just don't do it. I'd rather kick the ball 10 yards out of bounds. Like, stop punting to him.
Please. Teams are allowed to do that, Ryan. You can kick
just
the ball.
Just go for it on 4th down. Just go for it on 4th No, stop punting to the guy, man. It's not smart football. Stop punting to Peyton Bowen. There, guys, there you go. I'm giving some coaches some tips out there, all right? I am not the smartest guy in the room, but I'm telling you, don't punt to Peyton Bowen. Stop.
Yeah.
Stop.
Fight your inner Tony Dungy.
Yeah.
At the
Man.
Super Bowl. Like, fight your inner Tony Dungy that says, I'm going to kick the ball off to start the Super Bowl to the greatest returner of all time. Like the urge.
Yeah. And I know Salty just said to Sean, Jaden Greathouse has 5 punt returns for touchdowns this season, and they keep punting to him too for some reason. Why are we punting to these guys, man? Stop punting to these guys. Like Dylan Edwards. Why would anyone ever punt to Dylan Edwards? Why? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you do it? Just stop. But Sean, they have a big matchup this week though, which is going to be a really fun game to keep tabs on. Geyer is taking on this week's Southlake Carroll, which we mentioned Quinn Ewers earlier. Southlake Carroll, obviously a big program in the state of Texas. That'll be a fun one to watch. Geyer's going to be tested. Southlake Carroll is a good football team. I really think, though, that Geyer is on the mission for redemption from losing last year in the championship. So it's going to be exciting, man. But Peyton Bowen, a big one for Notre Dame. And that is going to conclude, though, the Notre Dame recruiting hour. We're going to get into a lot of mailbag questions. We're going to get through them as quick as we can. But before we get into the mailbag, if you could please hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast, share the podcast. That would also be appreciated. Hit that notification bell, because I'm telling you right now, guys, with only a couple weeks before signing day, we're going to have a lot of shows. Commitment shows at some point, right? We're going to have a lot of stuff coming down the wire, so make sure you stay locked in. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, 5-star reviews are very appreciated. And if you say in the title, Ryan and Sean are awesome, that would be a great, great title for review, in my opinion. So make sure you hit all that, and we really appreciate it. All right, Sean, we have a lot of questions. We're going to get through these as fast as we can because there's a lot. So we had a super chat. That was from Sean S. Sean, thank you so much for the super chat. Can you explain why kicker recruiting isn't emphasized, i.e., why are there no 5-star kickers? Kind of seems like luck of the draw recruiting kickers, traditional players recruiting. Thanks, guys. So, Sean, I know I've actually talked to a buddy of mine he was a long snapper at Rhode Island. So I actually talked to him before about because specialist recruitment is a lot different. It is. And Sean's correct about this. It's a little odd. So there are most services. I forget if it's the sailor kick. I forget what the service is for high school recruiting, because I'll be very honest. I don't spend a whole lot of time on kicker recruiting. I don't. Specialist recruiting. I don't. Be honest about it, right? They do like a 6-star rating or something like that, man. So I know that there's a couple companies that are kind of the main sources of getting specialists out there to colleges, and they have a couple different rating systems. And I go to usually a couple people behind the scenes there and kind of get their insight on it. And it's just, I don't know enough about it, if I'm being honest. So I don't know if you have any more insight into it, Sean. All I'll say is there's a couple different systems for rating kickers, and I think it is a little bit of a crapshoot, if I'm being honest. Sean, you're on mute. I didn't want to do it, but you're on mute.
No, I'm sorry.
You didn't look at me.
I wasn't looking at the screen. I'm sorry. No, but
so
I wasn't actually. I was actually watching the high school championship in Illinois on Friday and Saturday, and just watching how many really good kickers there were in Illinois. And I'm like, this kid from Batavia is hitting like 50 yards. Like,
that's wild.
I knew the kid from Loyola Academy was good. And then I see this other kid from Lincoln Way East. And you see, it has to be such an advantage, right? To have a kicker like that in high school, right? Because back in the day, Ryan, you went for 2 every time. Or you went on 4th down every time. It's like,
Sean, my junior year, we had a kicker that went 17 out of 22 on extra points, and we thought that was amazing, man. Like, kick kickers, dude. Stop. Who cares?
That's crazy. So this website was something that someone pointed out to me back in the day. It's called prokickers.com. And they actually break like long snappers and kickers down by state. So, yeah, like you said, it is a different world. But normally, back in the day, most of the kickers would come from like certain states. Like a lot of kickers would come from California. A lot of them would come from Texas or like wherever soccer was big. And now I think, a lot of people going, then you had the Australian phase of kicking that came through college football. So it's different now. Illinois has a really good crop, though, in the next 2 years. So.
Yeah, I saw someone said that their son was a kicker in high school and they did the Coles kicking. That's one that I forgot in my mind, if I'm being honest. I've seen it before, but and Sean, a lot of the punters now are, just Aussies, right? So you're going over to Australia now to get a lot of the kickers. A lot of the punters. So it's interesting, but sorry, Sean, if that wasn't fully a lot of good information, but kicking can be a wild type of thing. So it's but appreciate the super chat. All right. So Sean Green asked Sean, he said, non-Notre Dame related question, but just wondering, after early signing day, who do you think ends up with a better class, Florida or Miami? It's an interesting one. So I was looking this one up because he actually popped this in before the chat a little bit, Sean. So I have an interesting take on this, I think. I have an interesting take. Who do I think is going to be ranked higher, Sean? I think Miami will still be slightly ranked higher. I do. Just looking at kind of where they're sitting, who are a couple players on the board. Because right now, if we're talking about, I'm trying to pull it back up, but I believe Miami was ranked number 10 in the 247 composite, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to bring it back up now. But I know they were ranked I think they were ranked number 10, and Florida right now is ranked number 8. Okay. So ultimately, I think actually Miami is going to end with the higher one out of Florida versus Miami when the signing day comes past. But I would argue now that Florida has Jaden Rashada in the class, quarterback, talented player, that I think they have a more well-balanced recruiting class overall. And I know there's Jaden Rashada is a very volatile player, Sean. I'm sure you've seen him a little bit, but he's a very volatile player. There's some up and down performances, but that kid's talented, man. If Florida's able to develop him properly, which is a question mark, sure. But I think that they end up with the better class, but I do think that maybe Miami ends up with the higher ranked class, if that makes sense. So we talk about it all the time, right? The number that you put on a class in some of these recruiting services, I don't think matters as much as how the class fits together. And I do think the quarterback position for Florida potentially maybe puts it over Miami for me. I don't know if you have any thoughts about it, but that's just kind of
I agree with that. And Jaden Rashada going to Florida is actually right in line, right? That's a level of comfort considering the young man that they are developing right now. So if you're Jaden Rashada, you kind of see yourself and you say, okay, I see the way they're developing Richardson, this coaching staff. I'm comfortable with the way they're doing that. And that's not to say he's anywhere near the physical tools of Richardson. It's like, that dude is some throws he made the other night against Florida State. Was just like, I'm talking about some of his incompletions were like ridiculous.
Sean, I posted there was one dropped pass in that game, and I retweeted. I'm just like, this is why I don't look at box scores, because if you watch the game, there were some misses from Richardson, no doubt, but there were some throws that just the wide receivers did not pull it in, man. Yeah. He's a talented kid. Talented kid.
It's like if you're a good coach, you don't worry about that. Just say, get him into our building.
Yes.
We'll figure it out.
If you trust your coaching staff, you still draft that kid high and you say, we'll figure it out. That's how Josh Allen happened, right? Like that's how you believed in the coaches and the coaches got the best out of him. And I believe in Anthony Richardson's talent. There's no doubt. Is he ready to start day one in the NFL? No, he's not. But if you believe in your coaching staff and they can develop talents, Anthony Richardson could be a dynamic football player on the next level. But we'll see.
I would agree with your assessment.
Mhm.
I would agree with your assessment.
Appreciate it. We're going to go now. Sean Rogers. A lot of Sean's in the show today. Ryan, are there any high ceiling Viper type DNs we could flip? So I just want to knock this one out real quick, Sean.
All right.
I don't think that Notre Dame is going to end with a true Viper in this class for 2023. I think that they'll be active in the transfer portal to kind of supplement the Viper conversation, Sean. But I think that they are pretty comfortable with what they have on the roster as far as Aiden Gabira, Joshua Burnham, Jordan Botelho, like those types of players. I think that they're pretty happy with. But I think they'll look to add more depth at that position in the portal. So I think 2024 Viper is going to be a high priority, but unfortunately, I just don't think they're going to get a guy. They've been active. They've been trying to talk to some guys, but I just don't think there's a fit and interest enough to make sense for them right now, right? Like I just don't see that. So I don't think they end up with a Viper in the class, but I do think there's a couple guys, Sean. I'm going to come out with an article about this, but like if Preston Zinter ended up being a Viper down the line, I wouldn't be shocked. Yeah. I wouldn't. Yeah. So I think there's a couple of guys in this class that still could fill that role, but there's no true Viper right now in the 2023 class. So it is a position that they're not really going to hit, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. Let us move on now. And I know someone just said again, could Maris play Viper? Yeah, sure. I think he could. So I think there's options on the roster right now. So next question. Ryan Loftus. Ryan, I'm not going to go super in depth on this one, but you're a very active member of IB Nation, so I will pull it up. Serious question. Which transfer portal quarterback would you most like at Notre Dame? So the only reason I'm deferring to this, Ryan, is because there's still a lot of quarterbacks that I expect to hit the portal that have not hit the portal yet. So I would rather answer this question after the season, after the portal is up and going, after schools are really doing that due diligence. Then we can have this conversation because there's a couple of guys that have just entered, right? Like Jeff Sims entered from Georgia Tech today. Cade McNamara entered from Michigan today. There's guys that are starting to trickle in to the transfer portal, but there's a lot of more guys I expect to be in the portal in a couple weeks here. I do. So let's hold this conversation, not because I have any inside info, not because there's intel, like there's none of that, I promise. It's just I would rather not speak on players that are not in the portal right now. Because I'll tell you this, there's a couple guys that I'm hearing that are rumored to be entering the portal that if I was Notre Dame, I would have serious interest in. But I'd rather not speak on those guys until they are officially in the portal. So, but we can talk about guys if you guys want. I think there's a question about like Jeff Sims in here. There's definitely a question about Cade McNamara at some point. People wanted to know. We can talk about those guys because they're in the portal, right? There are options out there. They are. But as of right now, I don't think that the best options for Notre Dame, in my opinion, are yet in the portal, if that makes sense. So, yeah, we'll just keep it there for now. But I appreciate the question, Ryan. Do appreciate it. Great name, by the way. Great name, man. Ryan's are great people. And Nick P., what are we getting for Christmas? Nick, you're getting so much great recruiting intel and team intel on boardsideirishbigtown.com. Go sign up today. This is a fascinating question, and I hope Sean gets back in a second here. Robert Bishop asks, who does Stanford turn to now? So everyone obviously saw the news yesterday. We're recording here obviously on a Monday. Yesterday it came known, or over the weekend it came known that David Shaw is now out of Stanford. So this is an interesting one, folks. This is an interesting one because we've talked about this a ton, right? Stanford's been on the downtrend over the last few years. They've not been the same. Early on in David Shaw's tenure, I mean, he's a guy that's been rumored for every big head coaching job, both college football and NFL alike, with the job that he did early on in his career at Stanford. I think he was there for 16 years, right? So he's been there a long time, or not 16 years. I forget what the number was, but he's been there a long time. I think 16 years total as a coach, as a head coach. I forget what the number was. But look, did he deserve to be let go, or did he deserve to be, to have a resignation? I don't think that he's had great success in recent years, but I do think that he's been handicapped a little bit by how Stanford runs their program, what their vision is, how they operate. There's a lot of things behind the scenes in Stanford, right? There is. So who takes over. The truth of the matter is, and I'm hoping Sean has a player that coach that he wants to throw out there, because I don't know, folks. Like, I don't know. We were in the Irish Breakdown group chat that we have yesterday, and I was literally like, I don't know who wants that job right now. I mean, there's going to be somebody, obviously, right? Because there's going to be a young coach out there who's just going to be like, yeah, I want a head coaching job. I want to take an opportunity, or, there's going to be opportunity out there for someone, for sure. I just think that is a difficult job, to be completely honest, completely transparent. We talk about the things that we have to talk about with Notre Dame a lot, right? Academic requirements, that cuts off a little bit of the pool of recruits that you can go after. You're in Palo Alto, you're in California. For a lot of people, they would love to be in that situation. But then you have USC and UCLA that have kind of made an uptick and are in the state of California that you have to compete against on the West Coast for some of those West Coast kids, obviously. And then you take into account also that both those teams are now going to the Big Ten next season. So now the Pac-12 is also dwindling, like how strong that conference is or can be, right? It's not a great conference, but especially with USC and UCLA leaving, like now you're talking about the conference not being as good. You're talking about the academic requirements. You're talking about competing for recruits against USC, UCLA. Oh, man, it's not a great job. So, I mean, I'll have to do more research on who I think would be a good person for it, man. But like, I don't know, man. It's just not a great spot right now, man. It's just not it's a tough job. It's a tough job. Can you win there? For sure. You've seen guys like Jim Harbaugh. You've seen guys like David Shaw early on in his tenure. Can you win at Stanford? Yes, you can. But it's just a really difficult job. You have to be on your P's and Q's, and you have to have the backing to be a really successful program, which I think David Shaw did have earlier in his career, and then I think that he didn't have quite the backing that he needed later in his coaching career. So it's a tough job, man. It really is a tough job. All right, let us now go to Robert. Thank you for the question, by the way. I think I said that. Sean Rogers, Ryan and Sean, what's up with Rocco Spindler? Super highly ranked recruits, can't break into the lineup. I thought he and Harry would click. All right. Look, so I mean, let's paint this full picture, right? Because I think there's a lot of context to the Rocco Spindler thing. I think I would say Rocco was a highly recruited kid that came in, and I think that there's been just a little bit issue with conditioning of the body, and we'll leave it at that, right? I think that there's been some things that he's going to continue to improve on, and I also think there's been a lot of competition inside at guard, though, right? Like I don't think it's a detriment to his career that he didn't win a starting job this year for comparison, right? Because you had Josh Lugg, who's played a lot of football at Notre Dame, who's having a pretty good season. Jared Patterson obviously moving out to guard, who's a good football player. We all know this. Zeke Corral has really turned the corner now. He's playing really good football at center during the stretch of the season. And then you had Andrew Christopher as well, who was, last year in 2022, or in 2021, during the course of the season where you were really struggling at offensive line, I think Andrew Christopher did a tremendous job of being a kind of a steady improvement to the guard position. So he came in, and so now you have a lot of competition in front of you. So I haven't given up on Rocco Spindler. I think next year he's going to have an opportunity, right? I mean, you're going to have guys, because you're losing both Jared Patterson this offseason, you're losing both Josh Lugg, Andrew Christopher. Does he come back? Does he leave? We'll see, right? But even if he does come back, you still have a guard spot that is wide open. And I know that they're going to look at that position. And even if Harry does have Andrew Christopher back, he's going to say, Andrew, you're going to have to prove this, right, buddy? Like, we have Billy Strauss behind you. We have Rocco Spindler behind you. So there's going to be opportunity to play, Sean. It's just, I do feel like Rocco needs to, continue to improve and continue to go in and day out and day out. And I do think there's just been a little bit of competition for his services.
The more I think about it, honestly, I echo the sentiments that you already put out. But sometimes we expect guys to get it after 1 year or the second year, and sometimes it takes a little bit more time for particular players. And Rocco might just be one of those guys. On the other hand, it might simply be competition. when Rocco came in, he didn't come into the situation, in my opinion, from a coaching standpoint, that is as advantageous as Charles Jagasaw, Sullivan Absher. They're coming into a better situation, in my opinion, as far as laying a foundation.
Yep.
So Harry sees Rocco. Harry might have to break him down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Ryan, we're just not there. We're not in the building. We were there for the first practice after the pro day, and we got to see Harry work. And he literally turned the first group of offensive linemen over to Jared Patterson and Chris Watt. And he went and worked with Rocco and the second group. So, and in that group, it was just all fundamentals. And you have to ask yourself, what did he see in those guys that they had maybe turned into a bad habit that he had to take the off season? I have to break you down.
Yeah.
And then
build you back up. Right.
Right. So we might have thought certain guys should have just taken that next step, when really, in order for them to take that next step, maybe under Harry, they need to take a half step back and then move forward and get better. And we might see that jump this spring for those guys. It's just the way it is.
I think we forget about two things, Sean. One, offensive line and position that needs to develop physically, right? I mean, there's not a lot of guys who just come in or just are seamless, like you're going to play early on, right? Like that doesn't happen very often. Number two is that Rocco Spindler's only a sophomore, right?
Yeah.
Like he's not done. Like, it's not like he's going to be a senior next year. And if you get passed by a couple kids, like you're done, right? I mean, It's going to be a big year for Rocco this spring coming up and then this fall, no doubt. I mean, he has a chance to win a starting spot potentially, but it's not over with right now, right? Like Rocco still has time. So I know Keith Wiegand said, so Rocco wins a starting job next year. Does he have 3 years left? So Keith, he came in during the 2021 season. So he missed the COVID year, right? So he had a redshirt year last year. He's a redshirt freshman technically this year. So he'll have 3 years. Yes. So next year will be a redshirt sophomore. Then he'll have 2 years after that. So yes, he will have 3 years. Yeah. He missed the COVID year. That gives the guy the 6th year potentially, but he does have 5. And then Ryan Rush just asked, Sean, I don't know if you want to bang this one out real quick, but is Christopher Terek projected to play tackle or guard at Notre Dame?
It's guard. Eric Easton sees him as a guard. And I think we talked about it earlier in the show. In a pinch, he's good enough to play tackle, right tackle, on a pinch. But the focus will be on guard as soon as he gets on campus.
Yep. Nice and easy. And Ryan, we broke down a little bit more of his background. It's great first name, by the way, Ryan. Fantastic first name. But if you want to go back to the beginning, we talked a lot about Christopher Terek, what we liked about his game and how he fit with Notre Dame potentially. Sean, we also had from the history expert, who said, I'm calling it now. Rocco Spindler and Billy Strouth will be our starting guards next season. Your thoughts, Sean?
They better bring it.
It's going to be competition, man. It's going to be a lot of competition. We already talked about Charles Jagasaw, right, early on, who could potentially come in, be a part of the conversation. Andrew Gustafsson could potentially come back for another year. That's another guy, right? I mean, there's some guys.
Of course, Harry doesn't have the history. Harry prefers for his guys to sit. Mm-hmm. His young guys to sit. So
I wouldn't even put it out of question that like Sam Pendleton comes in and you're just like, like a Robert Hainsey effect, except inside a guard instead of tackle. Like it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah.
It wouldn't shock me. Great questions so far, guys. Really enjoying these. We also have from the history expert, Sean, that said, Caleb Smith and Brandon Hillman are the guys I'd like to have. We need to have as many 757 Virginia guys as possible. So you and Brian Driscoll could gawk over these Virginia boys all you want, man. But talented football players for sure. But even though Caleb Smith is not from Virginia, so I guess you're just talking about Hillman with the 7.57. But we'll see. We'll see how it all works out. Going to go now to Tyler Hanley. How did the season for A&M and Oklahoma being a disappointment help with Bowen staying in the class, Sean? It definitely didn't help, right? Like it definitely doesn't help their case. But again, Tyler, we're going to talk a lot about this, and I'll let Sean give his 2 cents. But like, if Peyton Bowen signs with Notre Dame on National Signing Day here in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a lot of talking to do about some of the media outlets that have put out some bad information. Like, it's just called bad information on the Peyton Bowen recruitment. And there's some things that, there's some things that are justified. There's some things that aren't. We'll go into this a little bit more in depth. But all I'll say is it didn't help. It didn't help them that they didn't have a good season.
I think Brian, kind of talked about this last night. Does it make an impact, the product on the field? Yes. It has an impact. Does it have as much as an impact as some of us might think? No. Christopher Terek, his visit was the Stanford game. You can't get any worse than that. Like, as far as on-field performance, might not be worse than that this season for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And yet still, they flip them from Wisconsin. So I think you don't look at games, you look at the program. And you look at the guy in charge. Right? What Marcus Freeman has established as the head guy for Notre Dame quickly on the recruiting trail is what it is. He's good for the brand on the recruiting trail. Brent Venables, long-time connections, long-time defense coordinator, like started at Oklahoma, so he's in a place of comfort. He's been connected to Texas in that state and other states that he recruited while he was at Oklahoma. So he has strengths. And I think Oklahoma and Notre Dame have dealt with their on-field ups and downs this year. And that is, in a sense, challenging. But ultimately, I don't think that will be the difference, for Oklahoma. And A&M is totally different than Oklahoma and Notre Dame.
Yes.
That's a totally different situation. It's not even comparable to first-time head coaches at Notre Dame or Oklahoma trying to lay the foundation for their programs.
Sean, let's bang this other one out from Keith Wagland, who just asked who we prefer at wide receiver, Caleb Smith or Khalil Barnes. You like Barnes for a wide receiver?
No, I was just saying the name.
Gotcha. My bad.
We can go to the next question.
I thought you were throwing me a curveball there. I was like, oh, really? You like Khalil that much, huh?
No, that was a two-seamer right down the middle.
Gotcha. That's funny. That's really funny. So now we have from Michael Johnson. Does anyone else find it funny that Notre Dame is ahead of LSU in the 2023 recruiting cycle? Michael, I expected it. If I'm being honest, I expected it. Look, Brian Kelly's recovered as far as his staff recruiting. They've been recruiting better at LSU over the past couple months. There's no doubt because it was not great early on. But I mean, am I shocked that Notre Dame is recruiting better without Brian Kelly? I'm not. Like, Brian Kelly's a good recruiter when he wants to be, but it's the trend that we kind of expected, right, Sean? Like, I don't think there's any surprise here.
Oh boy.
Moving on.
Thanks for that question, Michael. That was a great question.
It was a great question. Great question. Now moving on to Saints for Irish. How much input does Coach Freeman have with defensive game plan? Would his plan have looked different against USC? So, I mean, for me, look, I don't have the insight as far as, talking to Marcus Freeman before games, right? Like, I don't have that insight. I don't have that intel. All I'll say is this, man, is usually the head coach is very involved with the game plans, right? That's both offensively and defensively.
Yeah.
There's definitely some trust that you're going to put in. You're going to say, Tommy, I trust you to do what you do, or Coach Golden, I trust you to do what you do. But did he have input? Yes, 100%. And that is also, Marcus Freeman is a defensive guy, right? Like that's ingrained in him. So I think we can assume that he had a good amount of input into the game plan. I think we can.
I think he does. And, it varies, right? If you were to ask me, do I think Kirby Smart has a lot of input into his game plan? I would say, oh, absolutely. Defensively, Kirby runs just about everything. And then his coaches follow suit, coach it, develop it for the week, get guys about all of that. But, yeah, you can definitely tell. And I think initially as a head coach, Marcus Freeman is allowing his coaches to coach. And I think the more he gets into his head coaching tenure, he might become a little bit more demonstrative.
Yep.
In certain situations and certain matchups. So I don't think the game plan was impacted more by who wasn't playing on Saturday.
I agree. And I think the coaches definitely could have adjusted in a lot of ways differently. But, I mean, I agree, Sean. Not having Cam Hart, not having Tariq Bracy available, that stinks, man. Like, let's call it what it is. It's not great, especially against a passing offense like USC. Like, it's not great. But there were other parts of the game that it had nothing to do with those guys, right? There were other decisions made. There were other player mishaps during that game that had nothing to do with the defensive backs. But it's not easy to adjust after that. All right, so let's go to Ray Holcraft, who said, with the quarterbacks coming in, it seems they will be passing a lot as well. How well does the 2023 class pass block, Sean? So how do you think the pass blocking is for the 2023 recruits coming in?
Much better than I would have thought 4 or 5 months ago. Now that I really believe in the tackle situation in the 23 class.
Yep.
I would rate them a B+.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working through it in my mind, Sean. Like, if you ask me who are the best pass blockers out of the group, I would say right now Charles Jagasaw is probably number one, right? As far as upside of the position projecting. I would say that after that, I mean, it gets so tough, right? Because Sullivan Absher, like, you just really haven't seen it, right? Like, you just haven't seen it. Could he be a great pass blocker? It's possible. You just don't know right now. He's an unknown as a pass blocker.
Yeah.
I think Joe Wadding is a really nice athlete who, as he continues to develop physically, he'll be a good pass blocker. Sam Pendleton has experience as a right tackle for his school, so him moving inside the guard, I think he's going to be a good pass blocker. And Christopher Terek, I think, is technically a pretty good pass blocker. He gets in good spots, has solid foot quickness, and, gets good depth as a pass blocker. So I would say that it's a good group as well. I think that there is a massive question mark with Sullivan Absher as far as just how quickly he'll be able to mature as a pass blocker. Yeah. But he has all the tools to be a good pass blocker. It's just we haven't seen it, right? So interesting question, though.
And he's not like – that's the beauty of Harry Easton. Like, the way he wants his room to be is that there is no rush for guys to feel like they have to play. And this isn't a Texas A&M, Texas situation where, you NIL forces you to put guys on the field early.
Right. Yep.
Right? No. Like, Harry has been pretty consistent. Like, okay, you're great, but you're going to sit here and learn. I'm going to coach you up.
Yep.
So that when you step on the field, there's no question that you're ready to go. So I would rate all of them. Look, pass pro won't be the issue, in my opinion, for Notre Dame moving forward.
I agree completely. It was definitely the talent level and the length associated that I think they'll be a really good pass blocking group when all said and done. I agree completely. Sean, here's an interesting one from Coleman Smith. He's actually got back-to-back questions. He said, Ryan Barnes to safety if Cam Hart comes back? Question. The length and athleticism of Watts and Barnes and Bowen as a safety trio would be crazy. So I don't know if we ever talked about this, Sean, me and you, together. What are your thoughts about Ryan Barnes at safety?
He's definitely physical enough to play the position. I don't know if I heard correctly. I'm trying to remember because I thought at some point I heard that he was being cross-trained.
He was at one point.
At
Yeah,
some point?
it seemed like a couple of the corners kind of passed him over. A couple of the younger guys, talking about Morrison and Mickey, and that he was cross-trained between safety and corner.
Yeah. And
Yep.
if that's the case, then, full off season, lock in at the position. Yeah, I would be cool with that. I mean, that just gives you more depth, right?
Yep.
That just gives you more depth. And then he could be a possible big nickel in certain situations. He's definitely physical, man. You talk about somebody that likes to come up and tackle.
Yes. Yep. I was excited about Ryan Barnes at corner potentially too, Sean. I was. That length and that physicality, I was excited about it. And unfortunately, he got passed up by
one pretty good dude in particular.
He does well, and he's able to get a spot in the safety group that he could end up being a guy. Like, we'll see, right? Like, can we give a guy a little bit of time, I guess, is my point, right? Like, let's give him a little bit of time to develop. So, but I will say, Sean, the athleticism combination of Xavier Watts, Ryan Barnes, and Peyton Bowen is pretty intriguing, man. It's pretty intriguing at safety. All right, let's move on to our next question. Thank you again, Coleman. Coleman had this question, Sean. He said, what are the chances we land Gerby Lambert, who's out of Catholic Memorial in the state of Massachusetts, and Josiah Thompson at tackle? So, Sean, I know I've talked to Gerby a little bit in the past. I think Notre Dame's in a good spot with Gerby Lambert. I don't 100% know when it's going to end, but I think that Notre Dame is in a good spot, like right now. So I think they have a good shot at landing Gerby Lambert whenever he ultimately does make his decision. Josiah Thompson, I think that Notre Dame is still wrestling with how many offensive linemen they can take in the 2024 class a little bit. You have Peter Jones that's committed out of Malvern Prep. I think they would definitely take Gerby Lambert, no doubt. Josiah Thompson's a player that I don't think that him and Notre Dame have stayed in close contact consistently, right? So right now, I don't know if they're going to go to 3, 4. Like, I don't know what the ultimate number at offensive line is. I think it can change, but I don't think that Josiah Thompson's a part of the plan right now as it stands from my conversations anyway. So
yeah, I agree with you on Gerby Lambert. His teammate, Boubacar, and the staff has built up a relationship with him. And he's very fond of the school and of Harry Heastand. I've talked to him as well. So he kind of shut it down as far as communication during the season. And now he's starting to open things back up. So we should be able to get a nice feel for if and when things are going to end and where he's going to end up going. I think I would look for a list from him like soon. It's funny because I talked to
little intel for you there, right, Sean?
No, a lot of these 24 kids, it's so amazing, man. These kids with each class, just everything becomes clearer. And a lot of these kids are ready to release top 5, top 7 lists like would you? I had to check. I was like, yo, did he reclassify? What's going on? Like he's making a decision, but these 24 kids, they're not waiting until the summer. Like,
no, they're not.
Yo, I'm ready to rock and roll now. I know where I want to go. I know the coaching, the program I like, and it's just different. The clock seems like it's speeding up with each class.
Yep, agree completely, man. It's wild. I know I saw the top 9 from or top 7, whatever it was from Woodyard last night. I'm like, all right. I didn't know that was coming, but all right, cool. Yeah, it would be interesting to see, though. I know Nick P. asked Sean, if Keon Keeley doesn't sign anywhere on early signing day, is that a good or a bad thing for Notre Dame? I don't think it means anything.
I don't think it changes anything as far as Notre Dame. Yeah, I was just about to say that. Like,
yeah.
Look, is there a slim chance that he picks up the phone and calls Marcus Freeman and says, Coach, I really want to be a part of the 23 class. I guess he could wake up and God would have smiled on him that particular morning.
Mm-hmm.
And he could do that, but that's the path.
Yep.
It literally would be him having a moment. And can it happen? Sure. If it happens, it happens, but I don't foresee it going that way.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, ultimately, I just don't think the Notre Dame Keon thing's a thing. Like, I just don't. I would love it. I would love it if he had a change of heart and he decided to come back, but I just don't think it's going to happen. So it's where we are with that, man. It's where we are. So I know we had this one from Sean Rogers said tight end from Stanford to Notre Dame transfer portal. I believe he was talking about Walker Lyons, Sean, from Folsom High School.
Yeah.
That had just he decommitted from Stanford. Yeah, just decommitted. So it's not a transfer portal thing though, Sean. He's an incoming 2023 recruit. So it's just he's going to go to a different school now, most likely, right? So that's where we are with that. I don't think Notre Dame's going to bark down that tree. I don't. Would I at least entertain it? I think I would have a conversation with the staff. Because I've talked a little bit about, maybe Cooper Flanagan could be the Viper in this class, like all that type of stuff. So I would have a conversation about it. Obviously, Walker Lyons is a high academic kid who is going to go to a very good academic institution. He's a teammate of Rico Flores in the 2023 class as well. So I would have the conversation, but ultimately I don't think Notre Dame's going to go that route. I don't. But Walker Lyons is also coming off an injury. So, yeah, but he's a good football player, though. I like Walker. If he's able to come back from his injury, I think that he's going to be a really good football player for someone.
Yeah, it's sad that he's leaving because I just really like Stanford does a good job with their tight end.
They do. I mean, Benjamin Yorosek this year, Sean, who's a good football player, but they've had. I mean, think of the names, man. Zach Ertz, Levine Toilolo, Caden Smith, Colby Parkinson. They've done really well at tight end, man. They really have. All right. I think I feel Kobe Fleener too. I don't know how I forgot about Fleener.
Fleener.
Yeah, he was the second most productive outside of Zach Ertz, so I should have remembered that one. But yeah. And Nick said I made a Stanford reference with the tree. I wasn't dogging the tree, man. It was intentional. Wasn't intentional. Sean, I want your thoughts on this one. Jet Conley asks, any shot we get Cade McNamara?
You really want my thoughts?
I would love your thoughts, man. Can we say this, Sean? Will Notre Dame go after Cade McNamara? I have no idea. I really don't know. All I'll say is it would be a hard pass for me. Now you can go, Sean.
It would be an even harder pass for me. You kidding me? Cade McNamara, man? Look, Jim Harbaugh, you made the right decision, my man.
He did. He did. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to dog on Cade McNamara too much. All I'll say is he a better player than Drew Pine? I think that you could maybe say yes, and I might have a conversation with you. That's fine. But I don't think he's enough of a better player than Drew Pine for me to really get excited about, right? Like, he's a lot of what you have right now, which Notre Dame needs a little difference right now at the quarterback position. You know what I mean? They need Tyler Buckner to come back healthy on top of another talented player in the portal, on top of Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr coming in over the next 2 years. They need different, man. I don't need the same, right? Like, I don't need the same. I need different. So just my 2 cents. We have Bobby S. Sean that asked, do we think that Cam Hart, Brandon Joseph, Justin Adamalola, Maris Loifel, JD Bertrand, and Jack Kaiser will come back next year? So let's work through this one-on-one, Sean. Just give your immediate impulse. Again, there is no intel here. These are not things that we've heard. I promise you. I don't know if any of these guys are coming back for sure. I really don't. So, Sean, Cam Hart, yes or no? Do you think there's a chance he comes back?
I think so. Let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Up and down season, but a season full of injury.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Cam Hart knows his performance was impacted by the nagging injuries. But also, I think there's something. Cam Hart was the one talking trash over the summer about USC.
Yeah.
Leading that charge. And I think that's going to sit on his heart the offseason. That it was tough that he couldn't be in the battle to back up his words. I think that, coupled with the fact that he understands that injuries are what caused his play to be up and down, Cam Hart comes back. I really do. I think he wants to play in that USC game next year.
I agree with that 100%, Sean. I'll also say this. From the NFL perspective for Cam Hart, I've heard some feedback that he is a fringe draftable player right now because of the up and down play and the injuries.
Yeah.
So I think coming back for another year and showing that he could stay healthy gives himself a much better chance from a personal perspective, right? So, yes, I think that there is a possibility that Cam Hart comes back. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I have a feeling. So.
And I would be very interested because there was a lot put on Cam Hart as he transitioned. Like literally the summer he was transitioning, Brian Driscoll wrote a story of how important it was that Cam Hart became the dude.
Yes.
And he was transitioning from wide receiver. Like this was literally his first offseason training at cornerback. And it was important that he played well immediately. And he met that challenge. Cam Hart comes back next year, he's not the dude. I think he plays a little bit freer, with a little less pressure.
Yes.
You got the other dude on the other side. That's the dude.
You can't avoid Cam Hart next year if you come back. You can't avoid him, right?
No. So now I think he steps up the challenge and it goes back to him staying healthy, like you said.
Yes. Yep. That's the main thing for Cam Hart, man, is he's a very talented player. It was up and down this year, I think, a lot because he was fighting through those injuries. If he's able to stay healthy next year, I think that is best for him. It's also best for the program if he's able to maintain that. Brandon Joseph, Sean, this one I have a tough time putting something on, man. I think Brandon Joseph does not come back, but this one's a 50-50 coin flip for me. Like, I wouldn't be surprised either way, personally.
No. This might be one of those, I think it's best that we part ways situations.
It's been a disappointment, man, because we've seen a couple games, Syracuse, Ohio State, where he looked like Brandon Joseph, right?
Man.
And then we've seen other games where he did not look very interested in playing
at
football.
all.
Yeah.
At all.
Yep. It's unfortunate because I really do like Brandon Joseph as a talent. It's just, yeah. Justin Adamalola, Sean, that's an interesting one. Again, I think that's one I think that one could go either way, though, because, I mean, does he want to go chase the NFL dreams with his brother? Because Jason's obviously not going to be coming back. Does he want to be the guy for a year? Like, it's question. I'm not sure about Justin, to be honest.
The question would be, do you think he can get better? Does he think he can get better?
Yeah, he could be better. Yeah.
Because I think he would come back. If he doesn't think he can get better, then he should go. But if he thinks he can come back, be a leader, I think if he meets with the staff, I think the staff is going to let him know, like, dude, you're one of the unquestioned leaders.
Yeah.
Of this
team.
No
doubt. Yeah.
So not just defensively, like the team.
Mm-hmm.
So we want you back without question. So
and if because I know he has some, like, the NFL is aware of Justin Adamalola, right? Like he's a talented player, but I do think that it would be really good for him because right now he's a late day 3, maybe sneaks into the back end of the draft, or more than likely is a priority free agent, which is fine. Players make that transition and find roster spots every year. But I do think having a year for Justin to be the guy could be big for him. It could be. So I think it might be beneficial to come back, but I honestly don't have a pulse on that one. It could go either way in my opinion.
From the time that he joined the Notre Dame program, I am extremely proud of what he's become to this point as a player.
Man, he seems like a great dude as well, man. Seems like the Adamalola twins. I know they've been, and I know like Jason's been a little banged up this year, and it probably has been the season he wanted. But what a great family, man! What a great group of dudes. They really are. The Adamalolas are awesome people. Their dad's awesome. They have a great family. They really do. So I hope the best for them. I hope Justin does come back and has a great season next year. I really do. Let's go to Marist Loifau, Sean. I say he comes back. Yeah, I'm going to say yes to that one for Marist.
Yeah, they believe in Marist.
They do.
They do. They believe in Marist, and they managed Marist a lot this offseason. Just to get him back to make sure that he was going to be healthy. You could use the word baby in a sense, but Marist didn't get a lot of reps in fall camp. He
Yeah.
just didn't.
Yep.
He didn't. Maris. If I told you that it's almost like the Bears, right? Like this, we don't even care. This year is all about Justin Fields and his development. Like we don't.
Oh no, man! It's no. You're wrong there, Sean. You're wrong there. It's about who just started for them, the former
Jack Sanborn.
No, oh wait, no. Who just started for the Bears, a quarterback?
Oh yeah.
Trevor Siemian, right? Was it Trevor Siemian?
Siemian got hurt.
Oh, did he?
Siemian got hurt. The first got started yesterday. I forget his name.
That's funny.
I forget his name. But Trevor Siemian got hurt in warm-ups.
Nice.
Of all things.
That's good.
And they started the third stringer. But no, this season, really, one could say was all about getting Maris healthy and making sure he can play a full season. And whatever he gives you in the midst of that makes him better. I think either Maris pops next year or he's going to get passed up.
Yep. I agree. Next year it's now or never for Maris Loifout, man. It is. Yeah. It's now or never.
Yep.
JD Bertrand, Sean, I think he comes back. Again, he's another guy that has fringe draftable grades, very low ranked type of player right now. I think he comes back. I do. I think JD comes back. But if you bring any of these linebackers back, in my opinion, they all need to understand that they need to come out and they need to compete, right? They need to compete.
That's my issue. I don't. If it's going to be JD is the coach of the defense and he knows that, if it's going to be a competition, then yeah, come back. But if he's just going to be considered the leader of the defense and really not pushed, I don't know if I'm rocking with that.
I get that, but I do think that Jack Kaiser's in kind of the same boat though, Sean. I think that they would have him back if he was okay with competing. I do think that.
Yeah,
because honestly, Jack's been pretty solid for most of the year. He was uneven early on, but he's had a couple of solid games. He's fine, man. He's fine.
But once again, I think we have to sit and watch. There's so many things that can come. Heck, coaches might not be here.
That's true.
A lot of things that happen over the next month, a month and a half, that could impact everything we're talking about. Whether a coach is here or not could impact whether or not one of these guys decides to come back. So,
yeah. Sean, I put on Twitter earlier, man, I truly believe this. I think that every offseason in college football is wild. I think that this is going to be the wildest one we've seen in some time, man. I think there's a lot of coaching hires, a lot of coaching firings. There's a lot of transfer portal stuff already, recruiting stuff. This is going to be a wild offseason, man. I really think that. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to follow. We had a question from Coleman Smith. Ryan, what's your opinion on Schuler's teammate Toure in 2024? So, Sean, cool note on Toure. His older brother is actually Mohamed Toure that plays at Rutgers. My thought on him, Coleman, right now, Adon is a more physical and a more instinctual player than Toure. But Toure has much more athletic upside, in my opinion. That kid's got some range. That's a true free safety type on the next level, in my opinion. I think Notre Dame is pretty high on him. I think that he also likes Notre Dame, but I don't think Sean mentioned earlier, there's some kids that just kind of seem to want to get it over with, there's not much waiting. I don't think he's one of those. I think he's a pretty well-calculated kid that's going to take his time, but I think Notre Dame's in a good spot with him right now. I do. And he's a talented player, Coleman. He is. If anybody hasn't seen film on him, he's a junior safety that plays next to Adon Schuler, and he's a very talented player. They even threw him an offense this year out of necessity, and good player. Comes from a good family as well. All right, so we're going to Matthew Lowe. Any 2024 lineman on an offer watch? 23 5-man class is a lot. Curious about 24. Is it weak? So, Matthew, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Mentioned Gerby Lambert, I think, is a guy that Notre Dame's in a good spot with. They have Peter Jones. I just don't know if that class is going to get pushed more to 3, 4. I don't know what the final number is going to be. Of the guys that are on the board right now, though, there's only 2 other guys that have been offered, Sean. One's Josiah Thompson that we talked about. I don't think there's mutual interest there right now. And then the other one is Kyle Altuner, who's a really talented player out of the state of Maryland. He's a pure interior guy, though, right? Like he's going to play guard. He's going to play center. I like him, but he's also a guy that I just don't think that there's a push for right now. So I don't think if they go to 3 or 4, I don't think there are guys on the board right now that they want outside of Gerby Lambert. Like that's kind of my pulse on it. So,
yeah. And, with the class that they're going to bring in at 23 from a number standpoint, it impacts the numbers in the 24 class. So your 24 class, which is already great up top, might end up being the class that's less numbers, but more higher stars.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
more about quality over quantity next year. Yes. I think is a good way to put it. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it might be a smaller class, but I expect Notre Dame to go after some really big fish for sure. So TJ Fallon asked Ryan Sean, how many returning starters do you think come back to Notre Dame next year? Right now, it looks like 15.
Well, you have 4 along the offensive line, right?
3 along the offensive line. Yeah,
3 along the offensive line.
Yep.
All of your running backs, if you consider all of them starters.
Right.
Most of the wide receivers, I guess there's one wide receiver that may be in question.
I mean, Jaden Thomas has started during this year, right? Deion Colsey, I think, just started last game. So are we counting Deion Colsey as a starter? I mean,
let me tell you why I do. Because I know how important I know the plans they had for him offensively. So whereas if he wasn't a 1, he was a 1A. They wanted to really get to him in the red zone.
Yeah.
And I literally saw Marcus Freeman at the spring game, tell him, yo, we're going to need you. They had plans for him. And so his injury along with Avery, look, those injuries to the wide receiver room going into the beginning of the season had to make it uneasy for Tommy Rees as the offensive coordinator and for those first-time starters at quarterback. But you could look, man, you could tell the comfort level Drew had as soon as Deion Colsey came back and got healthy. He didn't have to wait for the ball. It was coming his way. You can tell there's a comfort level that Drew Pine has with Deion Colsey. And
I feel so good for Deion too, man, because coming into the year, the injuries and all that type of stuff. And I feel like Notre Dame fans have kind of written him off, and he's played well over the past few games.
Yeah. So, and I actually put that question to Chris Fink today when I talked to him. Is it a matter of when you have a guy like Drew Pine that might struggle seeing some things at times to have bigger targets? Is that more of an advantage? And, Chris and Malik pretty much were like, oh, heck yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
It's easier to see the bigger body.
Absolutely.
So
it's more inviting too, man. There's some where it's just we saw it with Deion, right? It's throw the ball up, man. Let him go get it. It's we saw it twice in that football game. It's here's a catch radius, man. Let him get a shot. So I'm happy though to see the emergence of Deion Colsey down the stretch. If Tobias can get back healthy, you have Deion next year. Jane Thomas did some good stuff this year. Lorenzo Styles hopefully kind of takes a step forward. You have the 2023 class that's coming in. A lot of good receivers that are going to be on the team next year, which is going to be exciting. We had this, Sean, that I just need to respond to real quick because I'm angry. The original Clyde the Glide said, why is nobody talking about USC not using the traditional punter versus Notre Dame? Sir, you don't listen to our podcast enough. I literally mentioned that during the game.
Yeah, we did talk about it.
And we talked about it in the postgame show. Yeah, man. We talked about it. Come on, man. Come on. Look, man, I don't have many wins in this space. So when I have a win, Sean, I need to claim it, sir. You know what I mean? Just give me the win. Give me it. Just kidding, by the way, Clyde. Just kidding. Irish Blooded Mailbag. What do you think about a potential bowl opponent of Mississippi State or South Carolina? So, Sean, it's looking like the Gator Bowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, a couple of teams that are going to throw out there. LSU is actually still in the mix if they lose to Georgia, right? So, Mississippi State's a team that we're throwing out there. South Carolina. Either one of those teams interest you, I guess is the question.
Both, actually, for different reasons.
Okay.
I would love to see this Notre Dame secondary against what some might call one of the hottest quarterbacks in the nation, and Spencer Rattler.
I thought you were talking about Will Rogers. I'm like, yuck.
No. Spencer Rattler has really turned his season around as of late. So, yeah, I would love that challenge, but I don't know if people haven't had an opportunity to watch. Mississippi State has some dudes on the interior of that defensive line that I would love to see Notre Dame go up against. I would love. They got some dudes.
Yeah, man. Cameron Young, defensive tackle, was going to the Senior Bowl for Mississippi State, to your point. Yeah. I would rather play South Carolina because I hate Mike Leach's offense. I hate that, man. That's like the triple option, Sean. Like, you need some time to prepare for that stupid air raid that he runs, man.
Rogers has been so up and down that he can pencil in like 2 interceptions against Notre Dame.
That's fair, man. But you know what, though? I would rather play South Carolina because they're hot right now, right? They have beaten Tennessee and Clemson back-to-back weeks. I would rather see them play a talented team like that, man. I really would.
It's an SEC team. So to say we smack the SEC team would be a good fit. Yeah.
Yep. We had another portal question, Sean. Chris B. And I said I'm only answering portal questions about guys that are actually in the portal already, so I'm entertaining this one. So I got a portal recruiting question. Jeff Sims is a quarterback I would like for us a lot. So, Chris, I've talked about this a ton, man. I really like Jeff Sims as a talent. I really do. I think he's extremely talented. I question if he would be used. I question if he would mesh with Tommy Rees here and just the offensive staff in general. I question it. I've also heard some things behind the scenes. So, like, I ultimately don't think it's going to happen. Would I like to see it? I would. I like Jeff Sims, man. I do. But I don't think the fit makes sense, though. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think it's going to happen. You like Jeff Sims, Sean? I don't know if you like Jeff Sims.
I think Notre Dame is a situation depending upon the offensive coordinator and what he's going to ask the guy to do. See, I don't think Jeff Sims like equates to like Jack Cohn. I think the Notre Dame situation is a situation where a guy has struggled at his previous spot and can come and flourish at Notre Dame, i.e. Jack Cohn. Jack Cohn is a totally different quarterback than Jeff Sims.
Yes.
So I feel comfortable if another Jack Cohn was coming over. I totally feel comfortable with Tommy with that quarterback as a combination.
Yep.
With Jeff Sims and what he needs in order to make him better, I don't know. I would feel more comfortable if it was another guy. Because of the skill set and how Jeff Sims needs to be used.
I'll say this, though. I hope Jeff Sims finds a good fit and he's successful because I think he's a really talented football.
Oh, I got a fit for him. I got a fit for him.
Who's that? I want to hear
Down in Champaign. I got a heck of a fit for him. I got one.
Don't hate that, man. I don't hate that.
No, none at all. We're going to run the ball and we're going to protect you. You can guarantee that.
I love it. You're going to run him too, man, because he's a dynamic athlete.
Of course.
Dynamic athlete.
Of course.
Well, no, I heard what's the quarterback's name? I always forget Illinois' quarterback's name. Syracuse kid.
You should forget.
What's his name? Oh no, tell me what's his name.
Tommy DeVito, man.
Tommy DeVito. I heard he's coming back for a 7th year, man.
Oh. Why are you doing this to me, man?
Oh, that's so funny, man. So funny. We had Andrew Radford that asked, is TB12 Tyler Buckner able to play in the bowl game? I don't think is he able to? I think if they needed him to, I think he would be able to. But I ultimately just don't. I think it's bigger that they get him back for practices, Sean, heading into the offseason, if I'm being honest.
I would, man, on a 4th and 1.
Use him that way? Yeah.
I would throw him in there. Just to give teams something to think about, absolutely, I absolutely would. Yeah, but that's about the extent of it.
Yeah, I don't want to bring him back too quick, man, and force him to do too much. I think that would be a detriment to him. Yeah. So yeah. I think I'm gonna start a fund, by the way, Sean, to keep Tommy DeVito's eligibility open forever at Illinois. All right, you can have him every single year.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Oh, that's funny.
Brian's trying to give me high blood pressure, man.
No, I'm not, man. No, I'm not. Milton Fan 15 said mailbag posted on IB message board and asked. Figured I'd ask here. Are you guys interested in doing a scouting 101? Basically, how you rated recruits. I'm very interested in that, Sean. I've actually, from an NFL draft perspective, I actually have done multiple scouting courses in the past, including one with Brian Baldinger. So I would love to do a scouting course for high school side of things. So yeah,
I love Baldy and his
Baldy's.
Oh, he's the best.
So I have Baldy's phone number, man, and I randomly text him sometimes, and he is a trip, man. He's a trip.
He used to come on. He used to come on with us on the ESPN shows a lot. And
yeah,
Baldy's the best, man.
He is so real, man.
Offensive linemen are always the best, man.
They are. You know why though? Because Baldy is so real, man. He'll just tell you exactly what he's thinking. Like there's no sugarcoating anything with Brian Baldinger, man.
He's the best. Trevor Maddich was always the best.
Yeah.
Offensive linemen are just really good at knowing the game.
Yes.
Like as much as you want to talk about everything else, there's so much X's and O's and intricacies of the game right there at the line of scrimmage. And that's why I don't Jeff Saturday being able to change the temperature of that locker room doesn't shock me. Doesn't shock me at all.
Yeah.
You know, because you know more about the game the closer you are to the ball. That's what they say.
No doubt. It's 100%, man. It's 100%. And I'll say this too. They're usually offensive linemen are very authentic and they're usually well-spoken because there's like this common misconception, I think, with offensive linemen. They're just like these dumb people that are just like meandering around. I'm like, no, offensive linemen are usually very smart dudes, man. They're usually very, very smart. So, yeah. Oh, man, it's so funny. Christopher Cowway said, thank you, Sean. We are the best. I guess Christopher was a former offensive lineman, so it's funny. All right, we had Matt McCarthy who said, what are your thoughts on these two 2024 prospects out of Missouri? Jeremiah McClellan, of course, is out of Christian Brothers, and Andrew Sprague. I think McClellan is criminally underrated, and Sprague could be a monster if he adds weight. So, Sean, I'll start with Sprague because I don't know if you've seen him, and then I'll circle back to McClellan because I know you have definitely seen Jeremiah McClellan plays, obviously, with Jeremiah Love. Yeah. Sprague, I just watched recently, Sean. He is 6'8", listed at about 260, 270. He's a very thin player right now. I think he's a pretty good athlete for his size. I just think, like you said, Matt, he needs to add a ton more weights, and that needs to be kind of projected forward. But as a pass blocker, I can get down, and he has pretty good bend in the run game, surprisingly. Sometimes with the 6'8" guys, I worry about, does he have hip flexibility to get down and really gain leverage early on in reps? I think Sprague's a pretty flexible athlete. So I like a lot about him. I think he's a developmental guy, but there's definitely traits to work on. Sean, Jeremiah McClellan, Christian Brother uses him a lot of different ways. Wide receiver, wildcat quarterback. He's a really talented athlete as well.
I haven't seen Sprague yet. I look forward to seeing this film, but Jeremiah McClellan is, for me, I want Ryan Wingo, but I want him too. That's enough said. I want him too. And I'm ready to see him after Jeremiah leaves. He's one of the kids I'm so ready to see his senior film.
Uh-huh.
I can't wait to see him in his senior year. Can't wait.
No doubt. He's a dynamic athlete, man. It's a lot of fun. I'll bang out this one from TJ Fallon real quick. Said, Ryan, how many players get drafted from Notre Dame in the 2023 draft? So obviously this is dependent on a couple guys going pro or not going pro. Mm-hmm. I'm going to assume some of the guys that are leaning one way or the other, I'm just going to, in this hypothetical, say, because I already talked about Cam Hart, right, Sean? I think he may come back. We'll see what happens. But if he leaves, he's getting drafted. Like that height, weight, speed, he's getting drafted. Brandon Joseph will get drafted if he leaves. Defensive line-wise, I think Jason Adamalola gets drafted. Isaiah Foskey obviously gets drafted. The linebackers, I think they all go back. Riley Mills, I think, goes back. So I think 4 right now. The question I have is Tariq Bracy. Medicals are going to be big for him. If medicals check out, I think Bracy might get drafted. So that's 5. Offensive-wise, I don't think Luck gets drafted. Jared Patterson gets drafted for sure. And then that's it. Oh, Michael Mayer. I always forget about Michael Mayer somehow. I don't know how that happens. Michael Mayer's going to be the first one off the board. I always forget about him. So no wide receivers that are draft eligible.
I actually think
Mhm.
he might be a free agent that's picked up after the draft.
Yeah.
If he wants to play, I think Braden Lindsey finds himself on a roster.
He will definitely get brought in. There's no doubt. It's just that some teams are going to question the injury background and the production stuff, right? Like that's going to be, but does he have a chance, Sean, like as a priority free agent to stick on a roster? Sure. He's athletic, man.
If you're watching the film this year,
you're like, he's open.
Watching the film.
Yeah.
You're going to see him open.
Yep.
A lot.
Yep. I mean, definitely. Like Josh Lugg will be brought into a camp just because of his size and the multi-year starter at Notre Dame. Braden Lindsey will get brought into camp. If Avery Davis is healthy, he'll get brought into a camp too. It's just he's got a lot of health stuff. But I think 7 is the number that I'm working with. That's dependent though if Cam Hart goes pro or doesn't go pro, and if Brendan Joseph goes pro or doesn't. So
I remember saying when Tariq Bracy initially dealt with that hamstring, like, dude, don't bring him back. Like let him sit another week or so. And he came back as quick as he did, and now he's dealing with it again. So, hopefully the time off before the bowl game, he'll be ready to go and everything.
And we haven't talked about this, Sean, but Braden Lindsey's another kid that technically has another year if he wants it. So we'll see. I don't know. Don't know anything about that, but interesting to think about. We had Berkshire Yank who just asked, did Kevin Austin stick anywhere? I believe he's on the practice squad for the Jaguars, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I believe so. 2 questions left. Sean Murphy said, have you watched Carson Hobbs Jr. highlights yet? I actually did this morning, Sean, because it just came out. I mean, he just posted it a few hours ago. He's physical. He's a press man corner, man. I can get down with that.
He's confident.
Very confident. He said he's the best corner and best cover man in the country. Talented.
He's confident. And the fact that Mike Mickens was banging on the table for him. I don't know if he literally banged on the table, but Mike Mickens, even after his commitment, Mike Mickens, you trust in his evaluation.
Yes.
That's what you trust. Like, okay, this kid is only a 3-star, but he was already committed, right? I want to make sure he was committed.
He was committed to South Carolina.
South Carolina.
South Carolina.
Yes. He was committed already. So these kids, like I said, they're ready to end the process and play and lock in. And he's letting you know. Man. Benjamin, let's see. Morrison would be a junior when he gets to campus?
Yes. Yep. A lot of defensive backs coming over the next couple cycles, Sean. It's going to be exciting. Corners, man, are going to be good for the foreseeable future. They sure are.
Indeed.
I mean, I just wrote an article about Christian Gray. Could Christian Gray do a similar thing to what Benjamin Morrison did this year? I mean, you never know, man. I mean, I'll have to be dependent on whether Cam Hart comes back or not, right? But it is Christian Gray's ready to play, man. He's ready to play, I think. So, yeah. We just had someone pop in, Sean. This would just made me laugh. Some D-Rock Irish, he just said, Arizona State quarterback Paul Tyson enters the portal. I had no idea Paul Tyson was still playing college football. That's wild. He was at Alabama originally. I think he's Bear Bryant's grandson or something, right? Wasn't that Paul Tyson? Yeah, interesting. Last one, Sean. A completely different one than we've been asked today. Paul asked, thank you, Paul, for the question. Ryan and Sean, it's almost December. When you drink beer this month, will it be yellow, brown, or black? Sean, I don't think you're a beer drinker, right? I don't
Ginger.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Ginger ale. That counts, right? Ginger ale.
Sure, man. We'll count it. We'll count it for the sake.
Yeah.
For me, Paul, I'm actually more of a whiskey guy comparative to beer. I usually go more of the whiskey route, but beer, I mean, I just went out yesterday for a couple, and I'm usually more of a lighter beer, like not light beer, like not Miller Lite, but like a lighter beer. So I'll say yellow to brown. I don't usually mess with the blacks. Like I'm not a Guinness guy or anything like that. So I'm usually a lighter beer guy, but appreciate the question.
Yeah. I am very intrigued by, one of my friends actually had a beer here in the Chicago area, and it was an IPA. So spending time with him and going to his events, I started to find out about beer. Like, oh man, that's kind of cool. Like they started doing flavored beers, and I'm like, oh man, all right. But at the Blue and Gold game, Malik had an event with his whiskey.
Yeah.
And we were joined by Eric Hansen, who is a long-time Notre Dame beat guy.
Yep.
And a couple of his friends, and they tried out the whiskey, and they sat there literally for an hour and a half talking about whiskey. I was like, yo, the fact that you can sit here and talk about whiskey for an hour and a half to me is absolutely incredible. From like the aging and the taste and the texture and all of that stuff and the sweetness. And I'm like, yo, this is crazy. Like whiskey is really this deep, huh?
Yep.
I thought it was, man. So like when people talk whiskey, I'm like, yo, I'm intrigued by the conversation because I think it's a pretty interesting. I think it's pretty interesting that people have certain taste.
Yeah.
Or it's the same thing or the same genre, but like how one's preference within that genre can differ from the next person. I think. What's your favorite? Give me your top three. What's your top three whiskey go-tos?
See, man, I'm not a whiskey snob. I usually just go Jameson. I'm just
Jameson is like an East Coast thing too. Jameson rules the East Coast.
If I'm going to a bar and I don't want beer and I just want a whiskey, I might like if I'm just like chilling, like I'm not like drinking. Yeah. I might just go like give me a whiskey sour, whiskey ginger ale, like something mixed. You know what I mean? Like I'm not like a hard whiskey dude, man. I'm really not. It's like I'm good with whiskey. Like the whiskey is my preference, but I'm not like a whiskey snob because I know the people that you're talking about, Sean. I also know the Scotch people that you're talking about, man. People get obsessed over scotches. I've never gotten obsessed over scotches, but whatever. But fun conversation to end this mailbag today, folks. Really appreciate all the questions, appreciate all the interactions. I love doing this show each and every week because we get so many great questions and it's so much fun just to see the interaction. So before you leave, you can hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell, ratings, all that good stuff. 5-star, nothing less than 5-star, folks. I'm tired of getting these 3-star ratings that, I don't like them. All right. Give me 5 stars, please. I think you guys like us, right? So, but we really do appreciate all the interaction. If you want to go to boards.irishbreakdown.com, continue recruiting intel over the next few weeks until signing day. It's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to be able to talk about tonight, 6 o'clock, IB Nation Sports Talk. I also believe at 8 o'clock tonight, Brian and Vince will be back for the Upon Further review from the game on Saturday. So thank you all so much. This is the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour. From Sean, I am Ryan. Thank you all for following along, and we will catch you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.